none of the FaZe players have tweeted anything because from what I understand, he went and left essentially without telling any of them. That's what I understand.
Time, yeah.
Which is probably why the jump ship conversation, Prof, is felt from a community standpoint, because it's like he just left them high and dry. Now, when you were essentially the face of the team, which karrigan was, there's a big fan base that a karrigan stands. It's Wednesday, my dudes. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Counter-Strike fans across the globe, welcome to another episode of HLTV Confirmed, the 22nd of April, 2026. The year is speeding by, and the Counter-Strike continues to keep offering more and more as the days go by. All right, I want a quick shout-out to our sponsor, Stake. Remember to gamble responsibly, and we are streamed live and exclusively on Kick. All right, we're going to get straight into it today. We got Lucas. He's pressing the ones and the twos. We got Striker. We got Prof, and I'm here. I have one eye that looks a little bit funky. Woke up with a sty, but we're not going to waste time talking about personal problems. We're going to get straight into the Counter-Strike because the gentlest of men's, we have a bucket load. This is probably the meatiest episode we've had. I can't even remember.
It's been a very busy week.
Can you remember another week where we've had this many things going on? Like
I just made the
top tier?
I just made the point on newsletter that, somehow in a week post Cologne major cutoff, we've had more happen than in the entire winter off season.
Yeah,
which is kind of crazy to say, really.
That's why it wasn't rostermania.
Yeah, this was the real rostermania.
This is more of a mania.
You're not talking, Prof. You're muted, I think.
Yeah. Well, he's been muted for a while. I thought he was just doing a bit where he wasn't talking to us.
I wanted to say the winter off season was a roster mania.
I like that. That's very Futurama-esque humor right there.
There we go. With Futurama mentioned twice in 2 days for me.
What's the guy with the crab hands?
No,
lobster.
Zoidberg.
Zoidberg, that's the one. Zoidberg. I haven't watched Jesus. I haven't watched one episode in a long time.
Taking people right back. Okay, so let's jump into it, shall we? Prof, we'll kick things off with the top comment around here.
Yeah.
That is Stake in conjunction with HLTV Confirmed, bringing people Vitality jerseys. The more Vitality jerseys, the better at the moment, I'd say.
We should see about Astralis jerseys now that they're supporting them as well.
And they're on the way up too.
Yeah, they are. I started a few Spotify ones. And the first one is actually... kind of shocked me. It was very interesting, so I needed to just bring it up. We had a bunch of comments on Spotify, even though these don't go towards winning the jersey. This one, Fippy Flappy, says, video on Spotify. My biggest takeaway was Prof and Striker's voices don't match their faces. And another guy says, I swear I can't figure out who is who. The voices seem switched. I'm just the idea that someone has been listening to the podcast, but that actually doesn't know how we look is kind of insane to me. It's just like a new little bubble in my head. And it kind of explains also why people just confuse us all the time. That kind of makes sense.
But it's on Spotify, the three faces are there, but you don't know who's who.
Yes.
So you do know what we look like. We just don't know who's who, other than Chad, of course.
But you can put video on Spotify.
Yeah,
right?
Well, now we have video on Spotify. That's why this guy is like, oh, now I know which guy is... who of these two. I just thought it was very interesting. Okay. Anyway, there's on the second page, there's some interactions with MOUZ guys between us, social media, whatever. Dino that said MOUZ jersey, double it and pass it to the next person. They said that they would give away a jersey if we say something nice about them. Maybe we can do that later in the episode. We'll see about that. And Zoyan, who says, what a treat for video-only listeners. I just think it's a little...
Now I don't want to say anything nice about MOUZ because that's bribery, man. Fuck that.
But yeah, that's from the Spotify. We have a bunch actually on YouTube. It was quite a popular episode as it was like the FaZe debacle. Obviously,
where we barely spoke about FaZe.
one day later, karrigan news kind of drops and everything develops in the last week. So a lot of people have been talking about it. We need to catch up on everything regarding that. But yeah, one is a classic meme, Marathon 21. I remember the one time we played PGL Bucharest and we went 0-2 after forfeiting 2 matches. And karrigan said, guys, if you think we're good, let's prove it now. Did you win? Of course not. 0-3.
Topical, isn't it?
Nice topical, yeah. a little, you know, also because this is Taco and FalleN, the original story, right? Cool. And then a bunch of people just talking about FaZe. Crazy how FaZe would have likely been in a better spot if Red Canids got that diffuse off at the major. Akala says, Neo didn't die for this. FaZe eliminated twice in 24 hours. No rain, no major. From major finalists to not even making Cologne. This roster is finished. Changes are overdue. And honestly, missing the major might be the only thing that finally fixes FaZe. I think that this is kind of how we feel about a lot of things. Ultimately, the winner, Borisando, another Chad Glaze, says, love how much effort SPUNJ puts into these slides and sheets. Must have been a real deal in high school group projects. Followed up by just a comment that I thought was funny. I bet he still has one of those girls in class make those for him. And just imagining, I can see it. Chad and your Stacy making all the little school projects. Was this the case?
None of this is remotely accurate. So in high school, I was a very bad student because I was playing Counter-Strike all the time. I used to sleep in the first period of every day, which was economics. And eventually they said, don't worry about it. We won't count this towards your syllabus. You can just sleep at the back of the classroom or do homework for other classes. So they just took me out of economics. And I also, because I played so much Counter-Strike, I didn't really have a friend group at school either. So I was a massive loner. So really, but I didn't, and also computers weren't what they are today, right? You could build PowerPoints, but you couldn't do as much, right? It wasn't as functional as this. So I'm kind of doing my homework now in my later years. You know, so I can see 40. It's only 4 years away, or 3.5 now. But yeah, I'm trying to really lift my game there. This week there isn't any of that fun stuff. I haven't built anything this week.
Purely conjecture and unconfirmed rumors and speculation this week.
Well, lots of it confirmed, not by us, but by people playing at home. So shout out to, what was it, Boromir? Borisando. Congratulations to you. There's the email, fantasy@hltv.org. Send an email there and we'll get you your Vitality jersey. But yeah, we'll have an episode next week. And depending on what we talk about next week, maybe I can build something there because I don't have an event until Atlanta now. So I'm home now for the next 2.5 weeks, essentially. So should be all good in the hood. And there was no crazy travel. So we can get things underway. Now, look, obviously Rio just concluded, but I feel like even though there's all the Vitality glazing, which will come, and there's probably less Vitality glazing, more using Vitality's achievements to have a broader discussion. But we'll get to that towards the end because at the moment, that feels like it's going to be evergreen. We're going to talk about some of the bigger news, right? So we had the Falcons karrigan leak happen during Rio, just before it actually kicked off. Then we had the MOUZ news as soon as it ended. And then we had the FalleN retirement halfway through. So 3 massive stories to really sink into and first of all explain to the viewer and then give our opinions on. So let's start with the Falcons karrigan situation. So the people who missed it, just before Rio kicked off, it leaked. Well, it didn't leak. It was reported that karrigan would be replacing kyxsan on Falcons. And that turns out to be true. That was announced yesterday officially. So there's no conjecture, there's no reports, there's no media says this is 100% factual. So kyxsan was benched over there on Falcons. karrigan jumped off of the FaZe sinking ship and has jumped onto Nico back together for the first time in 7 or 8 years. Since
that's a way to phrase it that has been very popular and quite how would I say people have been upset about that angle of karrigan leaving the sinking ship, but we can talk about that later. I just wanted to bring that up. I thought it was interesting way you said it.
Okay, all right. So yeah, he's now joined Falcons. So now in-game leader of Falcons with Nico, Monaci, Kyusuke, and TeSeS still there, and zonic is the coach. So there's a couple of reunions there. One being the fact that he's back together with Nico, the other being he's back with zonic. And neither of the times where these guys had together were as successful as they could have been. Obviously, we know the major that wasn't. And then his time on Astralis was nowhere near as prosperous as what ended up happening with Astralis. But reuniting with those figures, massive names. So karrigan will no longer be missing out on the major. ESL just put out the locked rosters for the Cologne major, and karrigan is listed as the sub. Now, people were asking me a little bit earlier today. They were saying, "Oh, how come karrigan is able to play like he wasn't on the team before the cutoff?" Well, the cutoff date for the VRS and the roster lock date are two separate dates. They're not the same. People could probably go look at the BetBoom roster and
Maybe
see.
Sub-lock is a better term for this, because the rosters are effectively locked at the invitation date, right? But then you can still add a sub for until now, basically until whatever it was last week. I don't remember now.
That's a good way to look at it. So sub-lock, right? To see if anybody was going to make any changes. Obviously, MOUZ being one of them, but they're using an academy player who's now been promoted to the main roster. The BetBoom one's the most interesting for me because their VRS cutoff had Siren and Flammus on the roster because Artfrost and Dilladev were unable to make it to that last string of events that they were playing. And then they could only bring one of them back, and the one that they brought back was Dilladev. So he's the sub, and they're not going to use Flammus at the major, as far as I understand. Anyway, I'm kind of going off course here. We may as well focus in on this big news. So this was, I guess, from a top-down perspective, pretty shocking that this kind of change happened from a multitude of different angles. When you saw this, Prof, what was your first kind of thought? Was you like this, when you saw the report, were you like, oh, this can't be real? Or what were you thinking?
Well, I heard a bit before about a roster change happening that's going to break the internet. And I didn't know what it was. And I thought it was going to be like frozen to Falcons. That's what my puny brain could think of. But this was definitely more internet breaking, even if maybe not as, let's say, good quotation mark on paper. I think it's just like the name value and the stories from all sides is just so much more emotionally charged than anything with Frozen could ever be. So I think for me it was very surprising, and it took me like a bit to cook on it, but I think it makes so much sense. And realistically, this is where Falcons should have been going a long time ago. Like, this is what Falcons wants to be. So why are we acting? Why are we giving kyxsan 2 years to like develop? We don't have this time for a guy to develop. We just want to win tournaments, and this is the direction, signing direction for a team that wants to do that.
You brought up a key there that when we saw the core of Degster, TeSeS, and kyxsan get bought, the community sentiment or understanding was this is just so they're able to compete in tournaments. Yeah. And these players will slowly be filtered out when better pieces become available. Yeah. Now, kyxsan and TeSeS have lasted a decent chunk of time. Obviously, Degster went pretty quickly, I guess.
Yeah.
But for us to get into this point, and we're midway through the first season of the year, and the start of the year started with them doubling down on their decision to not make choices and them saying, no, we believe in this roster. And then everyone going, oh, look, it's great. Falcons have actually given a team enough time to stick together to see what's possible. And then before Rio, so this has to have happened post, what was before Rio? Rotterdam, right? This has to be a post-Rotterdam situation.
Well, it was basically post roster lock, right? Or like the invite lock for Cologne. That's basically
April
what
6th,
happened.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
So
because that's when FaZe find out they're not making it, right? Literally the day before. And that's I think when it kind of started happening. I don't know. I don't know this for sure. I had heard that like there had been an inquiry in that direction already before Rotterdam or during Rotterdam or somewhere around
from
the
which
timeline.
way? From Falcons to FaZe or from FaZe to
yes.
Falcons?
Yeah, I think from Falcons to FaZe.
Okay.
Again, I only had this from like one side, and I'm not 100% certain if it's true. But it's curious, but it makes a lot of sense considering already where FaZe were at that point, right? So like Falcons probably thought, okay, karrigan's probably in a place where it could happen. Where he finally moves from FaZe, even though for a long time we probably thought it wouldn't happen. But in the end, I think internally it happened very, very quickly from what Twist was saying. on his little Discord message and things like that. It came as a bit of a shock to the team, I think.
So in 2026, Falcons came second at Bounty with a stand-in for kyxsan because he was unable to attend. They didn't make the playoffs in Krakow. They were eliminated in 7th to 8th. They made the playoffs in Cluj, but they didn't win a game. They made the playoffs in Rotterdam, but they didn't win a game. And then now they've come third in Rio. So their best placement was with a stand-in, and their second best was when they knew that the roster was done. That's a different conversation and probably a different problem to address regarding Falcons. But the drama of this, and not necessarily in a bad way, I understand that there is a large population of the community who has issues with the Falcons team, maybe not the players, but otherwise. So this kind of causes that to be brought up again, and then to people to be like, karrigan, how dare you? Right. And then you get these people who are saying he's there to take the oil money and everything along those lines. But the drama merely from just a Counter-Strike perspective of karrigan now getting to work with the next generation of talent of the Monis and kyxsan, reuniting with Nico, and being part of an organization that is the super team, which is what FaZe was meant to be for the longest time. You find yourself in a place where not the first question that I asked myself, but the second I asked myself was, how long are they going to sign karrigan for? Because he's 36 years of age. I thought FaZe, this would be it. I thought once we got to the end of this season, FaZe would be like, thanks for your time, Finn. And then maybe he'd end up as a coach somewhere. I'm surprised to see this move happen. So do we think this, actually, Striker, you might know, did this come from an initiative from the organization? Do we think the players were the ones who were looking to make this change? Do we think the Zonic and the coaching staff were ones looking to make this change? Ooh. What do you think happened here?
I don't know who initiated it. I didn't initiated it at all. Where it came from, the first idea came from, I would imagine it is Falcons, because they were the ones under, kind of pressure to start winning. And, the last few events, they've been in a position where the same thing kept happening to them, right? Where they're confident, convincing in the group stage, everything's going great. Then they hit the playoffs, and everything goes to shit, right? And all these situations thrown that causes a lack of confidence in some of these, 4v2s, 4v3s, and the way that they play out advantages, they just don't really play out to their usual level. And so I think ultimately it must have come from the Falcons side to feel like something needs to change kind of dramatically, because it's been almost a year now since almost 2 seasons now since kyxsan came in, and nothing's really changed. The team is in the same position that it was.
They have
back
more
then.
Visa problems with kyxsan.
If anything, in that sense for sure. But kyxsan's event, I think Harry made this point in the opinion article that he did on HLTV, and people can read it because that was also a really cool way of looking at it. That Cologne, the first event that kyxsan played for Falcons, might be his best event to date, and that's a problem. That is an issue if your supposed star is not improving over time as we would expect him to, with the experience that he's getting from attending all these playoffs, being in all these arenas. We know he has a choking problem in arenas, and it's not really helping.
But the whole team does. It's a bit of a pressure issue,
of course,
right?
It's a whole team thing, but that's even more of a reason why, as Falcons, you'd be like, okay, something dramatic needs to change. And it's not just a player change, because that's not going to help. It has to be a leadership change, either a coach or an in-game leader, right? Because nothing else will work, and nothing else will fix it, because we've tried everything by now. So it makes a lot of sense, right? And especially considering it being karrigan, who's known for his kind of arena prowess and just getting to his peaks in those moments, right? Like in front of the audiences and all that stuff. He is the perfect guy for the problem that they're facing. But is it coming, from my worry is it coming at the wrong time from karrigan's perspective, right? Because he's been kind of broken over the past year, I feel like, where a lot of solutions that he was trying to come up with FaZe weren't working. Over time, he was definitely getting more and more frustrated with things not working, and it's not just about the team, right? It's about himself and him not being able to be the captain that he once was, and all these things. And it feels like this jump comes so suddenly that I don't know if there needed to be a little bit more time for him to reset. Interesting. Reset in mindset, because that's my biggest worry for this, really.
I think you touch on an interesting point there from a karrigan perspective, but if we feed that into the change of FaZe's approach to management, right? We know that karrigan has had control usurped, or not even usurped, just taken away. They've emancipated him from it, right? So he can no longer pick the players and dictate the roster. There might be a part of his faith in the direction of the project, knowing that he's left with Jacob and Brokey, two players who I think, if you ask the general sentiment of the community, have to go on FaZe if they want to return to success. He might have seen that there was no way forward with that, especially in the short term. And again, knowing that he is 36, that his career, karrigan is probably only going to find himself on year-long contracts at a time from this point forward. If any org is signing him for more than that, they must, like maybe zonic just accidentally signed his replacement as a coach, right? Like you think, what are you doing here if you're Falcons and you're signing him for more than a year?
That's what I was going to say. Maybe you would get him on a longer contract, but just with the stipulation that, if he's not working in the roster, he can just be transitioned into a coach, So that's what I could possibly imagine, really.
So the big question that this essentially leads us to, and Prof, I'll throw this one to you.
Yeah.
Does this make Falcons better?
I think in the short term, yes, because it gives them.
Can you define short term? Sorry, I don't want to be pedantic.
No, this is good. This is good. I would say till the end of the year, but mostly for the next 3 months. And you also have to think about it. Not only is the major coming up, but also EWC, which for Falcons is more important than for any other team to be good at. So for them, these are the two events where you need to be in good form. And similarly to MOUZ, I think Falcons had very little to look at to be like, oh, we have a swinger's chance to win anything here, right? Like we can be in the playoffs, but that's kind of it. There's no other real upside, even though all of us would say maybe Falcons could do something at the major, but we're proven time after time, if they're losing to Paravision 3 times this year, you're going to lose to Vitality, obviously, even though they are the only team that beat them. What are the chances that you're actually gonna win a title? And I think that's where you inject this this level of experience, different confidence. I mean, completely different IGL to kyxsan in every possible way. So I think it makes them better, but I don't think it solves all of the problems. I still think in terms of pure role wise, the Kyosuke and Nico situation, especially T side, is not great. I would still want Nico to be more involved, but it's not possible in this lineup. So it has to be karrigan essentially unlocking Kyosuke, especially in these big playoff games, to be as good as he is in the group stage, right? That's what needs to happen. Can it happen? Obviously, you're also going to get a drop off from individual fragging output because karrigan's not really great there. kyxsan was pretty solid, but I don't think the fragging was an issue for Falcons, right? It was never they don't have enough firepower. It was always
the wrong
why are they baiting each other? Why are they not going to? Why is there no team play here? So it can be, plus minus 0 in terms of the fragging in the end, because you're going to get more when it matters more. And that's what's going to win you the games, right? So that's kind of where I'm getting at. I think it's an improvement. I think it's a risk. And I think it's a short-term move. And this is not something that you're going to build on for next 2 or 3 years. But this is kind of going back to what I said at the beginning. We're finally going to, yes, Falcons is a win-now team, and we're going to stop fucking around, giving kyxsan a year and 3 months on the lineup. Be yeah, he's a pretty good guy. I said before, we did this podcast after Rotterdam when I said they need to remove him, and that's pretty much when they did decide to do this. It seems like it's not taking them closer to what their goal is, so need to try something else.
We'll get to kyxsan in a little bit more depth later. I think I've been on here saying that I think that kyxsan would be able to offer more in a different place as well. So I as much as it sucks for kyxsan to be getting let go of, the biggest thing that sucks here is the fact that he won't have an opportunity to play the major. The same with Jimmy. Right? Yeah. So that sucks for those individuals. But I think that kyxsan, as an in-game leader, has more to offer elsewhere. And I'm surprised that there wasn't a swap element of this, seeing him go over to FaZe, even though, it's not surprising.
We can talk about kyxsan later. Talks about kyxsan. I want to say one more thing on Falcons. I think if they're doing this, they should also make another change, and I think they will after the major when things become more possible, to also replace TeSeS. Not that I think he's bad, but if they are doing this, then just go fully in that direction.
Yeah.
And then you can get someone that's more natural to our role and can have more fragging output to level off of what you're losing with karrigan. I think that is any proper anchor. Jimmy is now available on the market, right? But you won't probably be getting him. Then, it's the classic Bit and Frozen that are the other players.
You want an active anchor, I think, Prof.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that I disagree with you there.
Yeah.
It's that the first thing that always comes to mind for me when I just think about, okay, how's the team going to function like with this new player? TeSeS is the B anchor on Mirage. He will not be the B anchor on Mirage going forward. karrigan will take the B anchor on Mirage. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind. Like, TeSeS will take over A anchor position, which is great for TeSeS. He now gets a position which he's probably going to be. Look, it's not any more glamorous, but it's a little bit better. It's less jump spot simulator.
Options there, like, right,
for
if
sure.
you're a player. So it's definitely the softer anchor position, and a lot of the times you'll be involved in mid fights and all these things. You know, where if you're on B, you're not. You're just stuck, fucking jumping all around all the time. You know,
there's a big thing in my mind that sticks out with this narrative that karrigan's been pushing about FaZe for the last 6 to 8 months now, which is about DNA. Right, he would be using this term in terms of FaZe DNA. It's not FaZe DNA that he's looking for. It's karrigan DNA that he's looking for. And the question is, will he be able to get that out of the players on Falcons? Right. That's what I have in the back of my mind of whether or not this will be successful. And when you think about when FaZe are at their best, right, they are at their best when they're playing very back and forth, trade heavy chaos, exactly, rounds of Counter-Strike, where you're finding yourself in 2v2s and 3v3s mid-round after all these different trades have gone off. And the type of players that you think about on Falcons, a kyxsan, a m0NESY, and a NiKo, and even a TeSeS, I think TeSeS during Heroic is also quite fitting to chaos and late rotations, and this Cadian had a bit of that about him. If they're able to produce the scenarios where they can get in that type of a round, then they can have the karrigan DNA, right? That I think that is something that they can replicate and give him what he needs. I think the problem that karrigan had with FaZe is he didn't have enough firepower output to put them on those scenarios in the first place, right? Which is what Rain was able to provide and be traded off of, etc. And I think that is one of the issues that FaZe has had down the stretch. Obviously, lack of experience from somebody like Jacob, but almost like the way that karrigan wanted to approach the game wasn't working with this section of players, which is why they were searching for a solution to get out of this problem. So he's kind of gone, well, I can't find this solution with FaZe. I'm out of here. And hopefully he can replicate that with because the sheer amount of firepower that he has available to him on Falcons right now is absurd, right? Like, we're always talking about this. So, the question I posed it to you, Prof, I don't have an answer one way or another, but I can see the world in which it works, right? Yeah. And it does pay off. So I'm excited, and I'm very happy that we get karrigan at the major, right? This is a change that excites me. Again, I feel bad for kyxsan. I think he will do better elsewhere, but just in terms of this roster and where it's at, it's exciting, and it brings them now. It elevates them in the conversation without seeing them play and go, okay, now maybe really they can take on maybe not with polish. I'm not saying they're going to out polish Vitality, but they might be able to
but that's not how you outplay Vitality. You can't outplay Vitality at their own game because they have all the pieces on all the right positions, like all the team play together. Like, you can't beat Vitality at their own game. It's impossible. zonic said it effectively in that interview, that people keep referencing. You have to bring the chaos. You have to bring the disrespect, push some smokes that you're not supposed to, that they're not expecting you to, things like that, like to take them out of their comfort zone, right? Because if you play them at their comfort zone, you're going to lose most of the time, unless you have just like crazy firepower, which Falcons obviously have, but, maybe not in the right moments. But okay, but my biggest angle for this is I hope that zonic takes his hands off the wheel for the next 2 months. I want him to just let karrigan do karrigan, forget about all the structure that he's tried to put into this team, and just like let him do him, and then see how it all works together. Because ultimately, I think zonic and kyxsan had the same problem with the team, where both of them are more structured than the players want to be. The players are just fragging machines in a lot of ways, right? m0NESY just wants to keep fighting. Kryosuke just wants to keep fighting. NiKo is much less of a structured guy than, playing off of feeling, like off of timing, things like that, just like finding the right moments to make plays. and not necessarily, being super structured about it. It's just about finding the gaps, right? And both kyxsan and karrigan had both kyxsan and zonic had somewhat of a problem with that, and over time they had to learn to let them off the leash, and to not necessarily keep them limited too much, right? So karrigan is great at that. So just let him do him until the major, and then you can reevaluate and see where that goes in the future. But I think at the moment, the way that you win now, like really you make the absolute best use of the situation, is just completely let him have the reign and just see where that goes.
Yeah, okay. I think it'd be hard to argue with that, because when we were discussing what type of coaches would be good for FaZe, a lot of the coaches that we were talking about in the past when karrigan was still there, we're saying you don't need a strategic coach, right? If you have karrigan. It's the same with FalleN, for example. And that's not to have a dig at Sid, but it's like you have somebody there's only a few players who have that level of experience in Counter-Strike who are calling as in-game leaders, right? I think that the naysayers, though, Prof, are going to come out in the woodwork and say, well, look at FaZe over this last period of time.
Yeah, but I think your roundtable with the coaches was really good because you got like 3, let's say, real coaches in Blade, Zonic, Xtaz, and then they are describing like what they do, and you're like, oh, so you don't really do, like, you just watch Sky Edge, as Blade always says.
Yeah.
And you're asking about the micro, who does the micro, and like that's the assistant coach, or an assistant coach would be doing that, right? And that is what like someone like Sid, my understanding is doing for FURIA, right? It's not like he's not a coach, but he's just doing different stuff because FalleN is going to be the guy making the game plan and like the overall macro of how the team plays. But obviously there's more things there's always more that you can do and better and improvements. So that's just his role is kind of more like an assistant coach to a Blade, right? Or to an Xtaz, like a Matt or something. And that's no diss at him. It's just like a different need for a different team.
Yeah, I mean, that's a cool way to look at it, right? Like you can, like, for example, some of the coaches or assistant coaches or analysts could be good at coming up with the right setups for certain plays and things like that. Just like CT setups where like you just take 2 players together and show them, okay, this is how you set this up. This is what happens when this happens. Some of these little micro adjustments that you need to make within a round, rather than, big game plan things that, they need to follow throughout the course of an entire game, right? So I think that makes sense. I mean, I would, yeah.
Immediately out the gates as well, karrigan is just going to have a whole lot more respect given to him out the gates by all the players within the team, right? So obviously TeSeS with the Danish team, but the only one that you might question would be Nico. But we've seen all of these interviews and pieces and the way that they talk about potentially reuniting and all this stuff in the past. So we know what happened last time. Maybe it doesn't last as long as it did last time, so it doesn't have to happen again. Because once
people fucking stop talking about something that happened 8 fucking years ago,
you can't. Like, you got to use the history to inform the future. Yes,
it happened longer ago than from when that happened to when Nico started playing at a tier 1 level. Like, come on, just fucking hell.
It still happened though, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I think, just looking at this in general, they don't play until the 9th of May, right? So they're going to be in Astana. That's going to be the first event that we'll see them. So they do have a couple of weeks from this point forward to be able to lock in and see what we're going to be able to get. But this is where the footprint of Falcons is they do better when there's less pressure. And I imagine their first event with karrigan, that's when you have the least amount of pressure, right? So the first event, everyone's going to give you, a little bit of wiggle room left or right of this.
This is like the opposite of a normal situation, if you look at it that way, because usually everybody will be like, okay, we have a new game leader, new system. We need like 3 months for it all to click together. No, this is like, we got a new in-game leader and we're going to fucking win the first tournament we play, because that's the sort of move we're making. Like that's what I like about this move a lot,
Let's pivot a bit, because I brought this up earlier and I mentioned that I thought that, a year-long contract is probably all that karrigan's going to get signed onto from this point. Do you guys agree with that statement? Do you disagree? Have you heard anything in terms of the length of the contract? Because he is now in uncharted territory. Nobody has been here before, playing a tier 1 Counter-Strike team at his age. Now, it makes sense from the role that he plays, right? He's not a star fragger, even though he can still have pop-off games. There's no doubt about that. Like, he can still have his impact within matches. And I love watching him play as an entertainer. And he's a brand positive right? Like he's a very popular individual, so he brings that with him too. But if you were going to guess, Prof, or who? Yeah, Prof, we'll throw it to you. What do you reckon? Do you think this is just a year-long deal?
I think something like that would make sense, right? Do a year, and then at the end of, so it would be until like April next year, and then at the end of this year, right, towards the major, you're seeing how things are going. If you want to extend, if you don't want to extend, and also for Falcons, I don't think it's not like they need to live off of reselling a player or whatever. True. I think that's like I actually had like a whole forum interaction earlier today talking about free transfers, and like apparently we're not being transparent. We're lying when we say that Rob's left on a free transfer because he actually had his contract expire. So that's not a free transfer. But the reality is you always want to sell you don't never want the player to go for free. You just want to sell a player, right? I think in karrigan's age, and also for Falcons specifically, that doesn't really matter that much. It's more just about extracting the value of the now versus like thinking about something. They
still would have paid for him though, right?
Well, I don't know about. He definitely did not have his contract expire today, like 5 days ago. That doesn't make any sense. Whether it would be expiring in the summer after the major, maybe. So maybe it would have been a smaller fee.
That's what I had heard, but I even heard that late last year, early this year. But at the same time, I don't have his contract. I have no way of verifying that. It's just something that came past my desk.
Yeah, there must have been something. He didn't go for free. This time they didn't let their super known, well known player just walk out of the door.
What do you think, Striker, with the contract stuff?
I think it's gotta be short term. Otherwise, there's gotta be, if it's not, there's gotta be some stipulation in it, that's gives them an out early or whatever it is. Because realistically, Prof called it a risk earlier, and to some degree it obviously is, regardless of the fact that it is a really, really good change on paper, right? Or like it has a really good potential to be great. But there's also a lot of potential for it not to be great, just because of what I was talking about with karrigan being in a really bad points at this point. He's admitted himself he's at the worst point of his entire career, and it has been going on for a while now. It's been, how long has it been since karrigan won the last tournament?
I think 2 years now.
I have to check actually, because it's something like that.
It's the major final, right? They're still riding that high. That's where they get the glow up from.
But that's like once in a lifetime.
But that's the one that matters. That's the one they're looking for, right? And right now, you think about it, you're doing this change in the Vitality era.
So Chengdu 24. So it is exactly 2 years, almost exactly 2 years to the day. It's like a week, 2 years and a week. That's how long karrigan hasn't won a tournament. And it obviously correlates with FaZe and just kind of this downward spiral they've been on, right? And through all that time, I think he has lost a part of himself, especially in the past half of a year to a year, where things have been going downhill very, very quickly. And that's my biggest worry. But that's why I think Falcons will have seen the same thing, obviously, right? They will have seen this trajectory of karrigan, his age, all that stuff. That's, he is breaking new ground as an in-game leader. Nobody's really done this until this kind of an age at tier 1 ever in the past. Effectively, he's constantly the oldest player to play at majors. He would have passed that baton on to major, maybe, if he didn't end up playing this major, right? Or if he ended up retiring. So obviously this all comes with so many question marks, so many points of risk, where it has to be something not highly committal, to like a 2 or 3 year thing.
I wonder if it was, as Prof said, if it was something that's going to end in the summer, and that kind of lines up with what I'd heard. It was somewhere Falcons come in and they go, listen, we're going to buy you out of your contract right now, but we're only going to give you until the end of the year, right? We'll buy you out of your contract with FaZe. We'll extend that contract until the end of the year, and then we'll reassess from there. Because if he gets the Cologne major and the Singapore major to have a crack with this bunch of players, and they're unable to make any, they're not, the goal, I think, a major is a huge conversation, right? But just winning a proper tier 1 event with all the other good teams there, that's a start. Like, let's start there, shall we?
Legitimately, if the contract was like, you're getting paid $1 and you can never play for a team again after this, if I'm karrigan, I'm still taking this. Like, this is the by far the best opportunity he could have gotten at this point in his career. Obviously, result wise, bad. Individual form, not really his forte anyway, right? But team wise, everything looks horrible. He's not even going to the major, right? He's getting like 3 of the most exciting individuals in the world to work with. It's like, what more can you ask for?
It's a dream scenario.
It's a dream fucking scenario. So you're just taking
the
this
side of the fence he was on.
And this is where it's like the whole discussion about like him jumping ship, where it gets annoying to me is like, let's say it isn't, maybe his contract looks expiring. I don't see him being on FaZe after Cologne. Like after Cologne, considering these results, not qualifying for Cologne, I don't see him after the break being on FaZe. I don't think they would have kept him. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, you know, Frozen and Twist thought he was staying and this was going to be, you know, they're going to rebuild and everything. But even if they wanted to, I'm not sure the org would have extended this trust, because why are you doing that, right? Realistically, we're all talking a new coach needs to come in. Will that coach align with karrigan? Probably not, because if you're giving him a coach responsibility and the ownership of the team, that's going to clash with karrigan. So long term, karrigan was going to get fucking kicked off the boat. He wasn't fucking taking, you know, leaving a sinking ship. He was on the plank. The plank was getting sewn. It was like halfway through. So him jumping off of this, he's not leaving a single. They wanted him out. Like, he was not going to be there in like 6 months. I don't believe so.
I think from an organizational perspective, that makes an awful lot of sense. I think from the players' perspective, if what we've heard about Frozen re-signing and Twist wanting to come back to FaZe to be back under the karrigan leadership, and you're still bang on. The future had to look different for FaZe if they wanted to start rebuilding and going in the right direction. And that's why my thought was that, well, they didn't have a coach. Maybe they'd just transition him to coach and Twist could in-game lead under him as the coach and they could rebuild from that sense forward. But obviously that's not the direction it was going. And, you know, maybe if karrigan had some conversations with FaZe and management to find out, yeah, we probably will be moving on with you after the season is concluded, then yeah, it looks less of a betrayal from that perspective than it does the other way, right? If you take the stance of a Twist perspective or a Frozen perspective and you look at it that way, then, and especially, so I know this is where we start to get into like soap opera level drama stuff, but
you love that, don't you? You love that, don't you?
But these are the conversations that are having online, right? I'm sure you guys would have seen what popped up. There was like a Reddit thread that was looking at the former FaZe teammates. You know, nobody said goodbye. Overdrive just made a tweet regarding the same thing like 15, 20 minutes ago. So this is again, and I just want to say something before I say what I'm going to say. When I'm doing a podcast, everybody, I understand like I'm a community figure and I'm a commentator and stuff, but the podcast me and the commentator me, we do 2 completely different things. I am at the end of the day a Counter-Strike fan, whether that be the game itself or that be the professional side. I am like everybody. I sit and I enjoy it, and there's some things that I like, and there's some things that I don't, and that's the way it goes. So
now there's going to be conspiracy theories about you being an AI robot. So maybe, I'm sorry about that.
Maybe
I don't know. I don't know if you know what happened, but
there was just an audio went very funny for a second.
But when I say what I say right now, I'm not doing this because I want to, you know, stir up drama and have a Reddit thread made and SPUNJ said this. This is just like, there are certain
we're just
things,
following the conversations.
But there's also certain things with the positions that we're in that we hear or that we talk to people and we understand certain scenarios, right? And the one being, none of the FaZe players have tweeted anything because from what I understand, he went and left essentially without telling any of them. That's what I understand.
Time, yeah.
Which is probably why the jump ship conversation, Prof, is felt from a community standpoint, because it's like he just left them high and dry. Now, when you were essentially the face of the team, which karrigan was, there's a big fan base that a karrigan stands. Now, the org itself would have been the bad guy, Prof, in the scenario that you painted, right?
I just want to say, like, exactly what you referenced there. He was the face. He was the guy in charge. He is not anymore.
Yes.
And that's why probably he doesn't feel like he has that responsibility anymore, because
Yeah, but he should to the players there, shouldn't he?
Yeah, that is a different thing. But I definitely, you know, there's layers to this whole story.
I don't fault him for making this move. I agree with what you pointed out 100%. If you're given this, if Falcons came to me and they said, Chad, we know you haven't played professional Counter-Strike in 10 years, but you want to come here and give this a crack? I'll go, yeah, fuck it. Like, why not? Let's give it a go. Let's give it a go, shall we? So if you're karrigan, you can understand.
It's like your fucking wet dream, isn't it? It's just like some org. Exactly. Like it's everybody's wet dream where it's just like suddenly you get dropped into the arena and then you imagine yourself fucking winning a massive 1v3 to win a tournament. You know, this is I'm not coming to Atlanta. You know,
actually,
I won't be commentating the major either. No, I'll be there. Yeah, in a different way. Like, of course, I agree with all of those things. I just think that you are going to get this soap opera drama perspective from the community because of how interpersonal and a lot of the parasocial relationships and stuff going on and this, that, and the other, and people wanting him to lead FaZe out of the dark time. I think the dark time, a lot of people go, well, it's only just started now. It's like, no, it's been like this extended. The major is kind of just this blip on the radar that makes people kind of forget. It's like the Men in Black, you know, they come and they fucking do the thing and everyone loses their memory.
All I'm going to say is like about that, right? I think, I don't know whether Twists or Frozen are pissed or brokey or whatever. Obviously, there's some, you know, disappointment with that. Twist made it kind of clear on his own, and that's in like a couple of those two Discord messages, right? But then again, you're gonna tell me if you're in karrigan's position and they suddenly go, oh, you want to play with Monesi and Kyusuke, like guys that have been literally this close to becoming a title contending team for like the past year, and you can be the guy who takes them over the line. You're gonna tell me you're not gonna make that choice.
Yeah,
like exactly. in his position, everybody would make the same choice. Nobody would be like, no, actually, I want to rebuild FaZe from the top 50 ranking with no pieces that's, you know, with 2 pieces that you can actually work with, and you can get 2 more. You don't even know who, and all these things. Like there's so much uncertainty, and instead you get the offer to just go to a complete team that you can literally win with right now. You can break your 2-year streak of not winning tournaments literally right now. You're gonna tell me you're not gonna go?
Yeah.
Like there's no fucking way. Like of course, how it was handled internally, whether karrigan gave them any sort of a warning, not had given them any sort of a warning. Ultimately, unless it led to like Frozen re-signing like the day after they didn't make it to Cologne, or just around this time, you know, when they were just going through these talks, right? Then who cares? Like you would. If you got an opportunity to join Vitali today, you're gonna tell me you're not gonna go? Like, Jesus fuck. Yeah, like this is CS, this is competition after all. And if you have an opportunity to go to a team that you can still win with, compared to a team that is the worst it's ever been, you're gonna make the move. Like everybody will.
It's just there's just an angle of this where teammates in Counter-Strike, and it's probably the same with other esports titles, but I haven't played one of those professionally, so I can't really speak to it. It is so much more intimate of a group than anything else. You know, it's not like a football field where you got 11 players on, and then you've also got a shitload of like subs, and those subs will actually be able to play. And so this is 5 players. This is it. That's it. So I think that level kind of adds a bit to it. But let's look at the other side of this. Is obviously what happens with kyxsan, and I spelled his name incorrectly, so let me fix that. Bang. Fixed. So kyxsan is the casualty of this change. Now, Prof, as mentioned on a previous episode about kyxsan, and I've made comments about it too. I think that he will find more success elsewhere and be able to likely call the way he wants to call, because another issue with being in a team like Falcons is you have to manage all of these larger-than-life personalities, and well, they have larger-than-life personalities because they're players who deliver in that capacity as well. So for kyxsan to go to another roster where maybe it isn't such star-studded names from coast to coast, I think that he might be able to call more of the game in the way that he wants to see it. But in the short term, it sucks he misses out on getting to play the major. So right now, he's essentially marooned on an island. He has nothing he can really do about that. He is still technically on the Falcons roster for the major, based off of when the cutoff date was. So he would be able to go to another team and start playing in events that are not, right, the major, obviously. Although we have a case that has this with the MOUZ stuff coming up next. But it doesn't feel like it's in his best interest to make a move on a team now, right? It's essentially 2 months. It's 40-something days until the major, 40
Unless
or 40.
It was MOUZ, I think.
But he can't do that, right? Because
no,
he's
not anymore. Like obviously they've chosen to go in a different direction, but I'm saying like obviously
he
these
still
two
couldn't
things.
have though.
Huh?
He still couldn't have after the cutoff. He wouldn't have been able to play for anybody.
Well, right, yeah. Now he couldn't because he's actually on the Falcons roster. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
You would have to play like 5 games. They would have to play 5 games without him to get him off of the roster for him to be able to go to anywhere. So that's not a possibility. So
yeah, he's completely locked out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, it makes sense for him to wait until teams start getting eliminated for the major, or maybe have a poor tail end of this season, whether it's at Atlanta, Astana, CAC. Obviously, we've got Fort Worth coming up. There's a bunch of events in there, and then assess his options so that he can find the best team possible. And you'd hope that Falcons are relatively kind in terms of letting him go without charging too much money for teams to grab him. But if you guys were thinking a roster right now, because it's hard to speculate what the roster is going to look like after the major, but if there was a team, is there any team that comes to mind for you guys of where you think kyxsan could plug and play into quite nicely and be an immediate upgrade, or maybe not I think
there's like
more than a side grade?
I think there's only 2 options. One of them maybe somewhat of a side grade, but it's hard to tell from the outside a bit. The obvious one is FaZe, where there's a gap of there. They have to get an in-game leader at some point. I don't think Twists is their long-term solution. I don't know for sure, but I don't think he is. So that would be an obvious one where he does get like certain gravitas behind him, right? Maybe not what it once was in terms of FaZe and what kind of players they can get, but there's still a lot of people that I think would like to play for the brand, and some interest. The other one is Liquid.
Yeah. These are the 2.
I was going to say G2.
Oh. I wanted to say G2 and MOUZ are 2 other teams that open up after the major, depending on how things go for in the next 2 months. And this is why, there's this whole idea of like, is it just going to be a straight swap to FaZe? And it's obviously not a straight swap because we'd have known by now.
I'm not sure we would have because of what you were saying, right? So, I mean, he can't play. Well, it doesn't.
He can't play the major, but he can play the FaZe.
If he would be signed, they would announce him. He could play the other tournaments coming up. But I think for him, it makes a lot more sense to wait and figure out options and also see what's going on, because you have no idea what the fuck FaZe is going to be in 2 months, right? There's no. You think now that it's Twist and Frozen, but who says these players will be here in 2 months? And every time I say this, people get upset. But there's a good reason for all of them to leave, and I wouldn't mind the idea. I still think the idea of just like destroying it and starting from 0 is better. Why are you smiling so much?
I just came up with one more name that is missing in a game leader.
FURIA.
No,
but it's also true at the end of the year.
Yeah, he can't wait that long.
Yeah,
no,
he can't sit on the bench for like 8 months.
I was talking about BCGame.
Oh,
fuck off.
I don't want him to do that. As I've said it before, I think it's a fucking career suicide to join BCGame.
That was last episode. You guys were both cranky, going hard on Simple and BCG. People thought it was me.
It's just so much. Whatever, man. I'm not going to get back into that. It's just I'm still because I know how many players they ask and like how many players have said no, and even players that have apparently played with Simple before have said no. And things like that. That you're like, well. Then maybe it's not a good team. Maybe it's not a good project.
There is obviously the MOUZ one is going to depend on what happens with Exertion, but we'll get into the MOUZ conversation in a minute. That one can wait. That's our next big topic for the day. But
so you said G2 one. You think he would be a replacement for Hunter?
Well, it depends what happens at the major, right? Because if people were watching during Rio when Sampaias was calling, obviously it's a big let off of the pressure valve. And seeing some of these position swaps a little bit more closely with Nertz and Mattis, why, if it doesn't work with Hunter and they're not finding what they want, it's like, oh, actually, things were better with Sampaias. Maybe we bring in kyxsan. I don't know.
Reunion with Saw, it's tried, tested. He kind of knows what he's. And I think the style matches, obviously style matches when kyxsan grew up a lot under Saw with these heroic lineups and whatnot. So there's a lot of synergies there. This is not anything like necessarily against Hunter, but like their best performances were early on in this lineup and hasn't been very close to that since. They had some decent showings. It's not like they necessarily need to, but maybe they should regardless.
There's one other one, which would be Aurora. And I know when I talked about the Alexei
Oh,
and Molodoi stuff that a lot of people called me crazy. And even when I said it, I said that I didn't believe it. But when I said that, now I have learnt that I can say relatively confidently that Aurora would explore international rosters in the future. So even though what I said back then seemed crazy, the idea of them moving away from a Turkish roster it's on the table. I can say that 100%. Confidently. So
I mean, they're not like a Turkish organization or anything.
No,
they had Russian players before this, right? It's not like they have some like deep allegiance to Turkish Counter-Strike that they need to respect. But even in these things that you're saying, it is still like a Turkish core with international players inside. So they would still maintain a lot of that identity anyway.
But I think the biggest takeaway from this right now is kyxsan has a decent amount of options post-major, depending on the fallout.
Yeah.
So he's in not a terrible position as long as Falcons are willing to be reasonable with how much to sell him for or let him go. So we can almost round that out there.
Yeah, look, even if none of the big ones work out, like there's a team like Gamer Legion, let's say, and like if those keep the decent pieces, like that could also be a place for him to rebuild, right? So like it's not like there's definitely spots.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
NIP or whatever, these are kind of the worst case scenarios for him right now. Yeah. So if that's the worst case scenario, I think you're in a really good spot.
That's not bad.
Someone said to Liquid. I don't know if we'd wish that on our worst enemies at the moment, but you never know. I think Liquid is also
it's better than BCGame.
It is a possible organization of stature. Okay. On the other framing is obviously what happens to FaZe. So in the short term, they're using HOTU to be playing in Fort Worth and then Atlanta. That for them is in like 7 or 8 days, something along those lines. So it's going to be Jacob, Brokey, Twist, Frozen, and HOTU, who was just of Ent's fame. In terms of who's going to pick up the in-game leader duties, we know that's going to be Twists in temporary fashion, and they added NKJ as their coach. So there's a bit of an Ent's link there as well. Between HOTU and enkay. In terms of the long-term future of FaZe, this at least changes the core of the roster going forward for potential changes. So look, I have absolutely no idea what possible direction the organization wants to go now, even though the future, as we discussed, did feel like it would have been without karrigan anyway. So they're still in this position where there are some teams, if they underperform at the major, people are going to be trying to gobble up Frozen. I think even though the community wants to kind of have this negative framing on Twists, Twist is still a world-class Counter-Strike player who could slot into a lot of other teams. With your Brokies and your Jacobs, unfortunately for those two, it's going to be a step down before it's a step back up. I don't see any top organizations needing players with their output or particular skill sets. So what happens to FaZe is almost like when it's how long is a piece of string? Well, I don't know. How long does the piece of string need to be?
There could be so many different options, man. Like by the time that the major rolls around, like effectively between now and the major and like shortly after it ends, there's probably going to be like 50 options discussed, some questions shot to a few players that might be somewhere on the edge of, staying with their current team, not staying with their current team. Some of the NAVI guys, for example, who have been kind of like teetering back and forth, like an email or whatever it is, that seem like there could be a world where they move. There's going to be a lot of questions thrown to a lot of these players, and I'm sure they will come up with, I don't know how many different possible iterations of a FaZe roster, but how it actually works out, who the hell knows? Because there's so many moving parts at the moment. Like it could go any which way.
Yeah, and I mean, I know people are saying like they have a shit VRS situation. They're kind of gone, but they have 3 tournaments before the major.
Yeah.
And so their core value could go up a lot if they do decently around these tournaments. And then, if you introduce some players as loans or stand-ins or whatever, or you sign one player, you have a lot of more roster flexibility to do more changes by the start of next season to have like a team that makes sense. Because, I also agree. Like, it's funny because just only one player left so far, but we know it needs to be more. It has to be more. And and you at the same time you don't want to do it all at the same time to lose all of your VRS if you can actually remain relevant through. So they have Blast Rivals, I Am Atlanta, and then Stake Ranked Episode 2. These are the 3 tournaments they have all in May, pretty much. Yeah, so there's possibilities to do something. So maybe NATU is, you know, a guy coming in that allows you to do two more changes and keep the core moving forward. Maybe then after that you bring in 2 player, maybe another player leaves, whatever. You know, there's possibilities. But what I said on Twitter, I agree with myself. What I said.
That's nice. I'm glad you still agree with yourself.
I mean, a lot of people don't do that; just tweet for clout and rage bait. But bringing in the coach, as much as I said, not a huge name, but it's a step in the right direction to actually bring in the coach first before making roster changes, because it is, at the end of the day, on the coach to understand the dynamics in the team and the players and who wants to be here and who wants to do what. And without that, you know, you do need like a good general manager, head of esports, whatever, doing these transfers, actually talking about the money. But that's not a person that can actually understand usually the intricate details of Counter-Strike and what each player needs to succeed. So starting that process without a coach would be wrong. And they decided to go for NKJ. You know, no name, but not like super successful name. His end stint was not anything to be super excited about, realistically. But you know, it's something. It's something.
Just for those who aren't familiar with enkay, German used to be Source player. In CSGO, he coached a bunch of teams. He was an analyst in the early days for like MOUZ, Team Envious, G2. And then he had some coaching stints at Sprout, Big. There's obviously ENCE, as we were just discussing, and now FaZe. So it's also the coaching market is quite difficult unless, you know, you could take a punt on an absolute random, but that in itself is a risk, and you think FaZe are not going to take those type of risks. So we'll see how enkay does in that role. Look, as far as organization goes, it is a jump from ENCE to FaZe, but it's not going to be any easier than it was. Oh, no. Wow, funny. Easy for ENCE, and it's going to be tough for him. So I wish him the best of luck. Nice guy. And we'll see what kind of comes out with FaZe, but we won't really know what comes out of the wash until after the major and everything kind of falls into place. All right. The MOUZ and then the FalleN conversation is, well, it's going to take time. These are big topics. Maybe the FalleN one isn't huge. We'll see how much we can get through, but there is an opportunity or a possibility, excuse me, or there's an opportunity too, that we might not get into the Rio conversation, which is mainly going to be some vitality glazing and a spirit form check. I guess we might just push that until next week's episode because there's no tournament until next week. So look, if you were a Vitality fan and you were hoping for us to glaze them, we do that every other week, so you might miss out on that. But either way, I'll shut the fuck up and we'll keep moving because we do have a bit more to get through. So MOUZ made some roster changes on the conclusion of Rio. They still made it to the playoffs, but in the quarterfinal, they got completely blanked by Spirit. They got dominated by Spirit. It wasn't close at all. And then within the coming days, they announced some roster changes. So this one's a little bit trickier to explain just based off of a couple. It's come after the roster lock, essentially. So here's the long and the short for people playing at home. For the remainder of the season, up until the major, they'll be playing with JL as a stand-in, and they have promoted Zelex, who they used back when the Spinx Shui situation happened for Katowice, to the main roster. So for the remainder of the season, it will be Exertion, who's taken over in-game leadership, Torji, Spinx, JL, and then Zelex. At the major, JL will not play, and Brolin will play. And they will use Zelex and Brolin to complete the rest of the roster, essentially. So that's the plan. That's the plan for MOUZ for the rest of the season. It came as a bit of a shock, mainly because of the timing, Striker. Do you feel like why do you think they've decided to do this now?
Well, we had a long kind of talk with the MOUZ guys as this was getting announced, and they did provide quite a bit of kind of background info in terms of the kind of off-timing nature of it and the suddenness of it. Obviously, there was always going to be some speculation, similarly to when Shuhei was kicked like one tournament into the season last time around, right? And this kind of had similar vibes to me for a moment.
A bit knee-jerky, isn't it?
Bit knee-jerky, but frankly, I think they, as much as the rest of the scene realized that they should have made the changes at the beginning of the season. This is not something that they've said, by the way. It's just about more my read of the situation, where they just slept on it for too long and then realized it was too late. So it might as well just get ahead of it and make the changes as soon as possible, because that's effectively what they are doing. They're making sure that they can use the rest of the season for something productive, rather than, play out the rest of the season with a deadline up that you effectively know that you're going to play, you're not going to play with for the second season. And now you just give your two new pieces, let's say 3 new pieces if you include Xerxon into that conversation, with a little bit of time of some real practice at tournaments, but the next 2 tournaments, Astana and CAC, and even the major. I mean, for Zelix, it's going to be the first major and all that stuff. So it's also some sort of an experience for him, regardless of how they do that, right? You get them some experience.
He won't get a sticker, just for everybody playing at home, which seems to be a big deal for everybody. But he won't be getting a sticker, but he will be playing at the major. I'll tell you which one's more important.
Yeah, but I think it's honestly, as much as at the beginning I thought it was a bit too knee-jerk and too rushed, but I do think it's better than if they just waited for the second part of the season to kick this off, especially if they're confident in the Xerxon move, which I do think that they are, because he's effectively been moving in this direction for a while now. Ever since the Shuhei removal, effectively, he has taken up more responsibility alongside with Torji, right? So it made a lot of sense for him to take it up more full time, especially in the positions that he's in. It's a lot of positions that you would see in game leaders play in, regardless, right? Kind of a hard entry sometimes, in the pack all the time. So, like, from a lot of perspectives, it makes sense, because they've already kind of been grooming him to move into this direction for about 1.5 years now, and then you can figure out who to take for the side, right? Because JL is just the trial for the moment, and they will see for the next couple of tournaments whether it's going to be something that will continue past this season. And if not, that's a piece that you can just replace 1-to-1, right? Let's say Frozen becomes available, he can come back to MOUZ or whatever. One of these kind of lurkers, closers, anchors, like specialist closer anchors. You will have your pick probably as MOUZ still. You will have a pretty good amount of possibilities, right? So I do think that it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, you don't want Jimmy to end up like Sergey, right? You need Jimmy on another team. The family can't be cursed, right? The player can't be good and then disappear and then he's gone. We need Jimmy on a roster. I think he's in a similar position to kyxsan going forward. But there is something about this. Not about the change itself, but about the way that they handled the change. I don't know if people saw, but sycrone put out a detailed post. It's just like a screenshot of the body of text. And I think it's very good that
refreshing.
The coach, takes this type of ownership over the scenario, because fingers do get pointed in the direction of the management and the coach of why roster changes do or don't happen. And one of the things that I think we were all discussing after last year, which was a very successful year in terms of being consistent and making deep runs, but not with the trophies, was, is MOUZ going to change? And I think everybody was a bit like, oh, they didn't make the roster change, so things are extremely stale from that scenario, regardless of how consistent they were. And all of the narrative from these players up until very recently was, we still believe in each other, we think this is possible, we believe in this group. And with what we saw as the results, I think that felt pretty tiresome from a community standpoint, right? Because they just continued to do the same. Nothing really changed. And then Jimmy gave an interview after what happened in Rio, and he was like, well, roster changes are going to have to happen if this keeps happening. And then within 24 hours of that, roster changes did happen.
It's funny that he said probably not before the major. Boom, next day he's cut. You're like,
but that tells you how quick this roster change, the decision to make this change kind of went down. And even to the point where, I think, Brolin was just on a helicopter with sycrone and Sabrina, who was the manager of the team, just yesterday. So they were hanging around in Brazil for a little bit longer, unless they had really late flights for a choice. So this just shows you how quick this has kind of all taken place. But I do respect the way that sycrone handled it and the things that he said. So if people want to go and read that and check it out, I would recommend they do. You can have a bit of a read. But it kind of takes me to the next question, which Striker was polishing off there, but I don't know if I agree with it, Prof.
Okay.
In terms of the player changes that were made within the team. Let me ask you this. in the big games for MOUZ, who are the players who you think weren't delivering?
I love the leading Chad questions.
But
objection, leading. No,
look, I'll try again. What do you think the problems were with MOUZ?
No, I'll say,
I know where you're going to go with it.
I'll say this: I respect the change. I think changes were necessary, but I think he made the wrong. He sided with the wrong gang. He went with the wrong direction in the changes, because I think for me, first of all, exertion was always low key calling in this lineup, kind of like Nico is. Like it's the same dynamic.
I brought this up early in the Brolin tenure.
Like we spoke about this even when Shui left. Like this is what I believe. You know, everyone's talking, oh, why did Shui leave? Was something happening? Because I believe it's just essentially a clash of two people that wanted control and wanted things done in different ways, and they sided with exertion in that one, and they sided with exertion once again here. But now at least it is actually on his back to make these decisions, and we can judge him for how the team plays, because I think it's kind of what he said in the whole statement. He said the decision is not fair to Brawl on a personal level, but leadership sometimes mean accepting that fairness and necessity are not always the same thing. I feel like Brolin was never set up to be like truly the ideal of this team, and it was always kind of interim, holding, doing something, kind of like kyxsan on Falcons. It's the same dynamic, I feel. So him leaving this lineup, they tried to give him as good of a farewell to like set him up to go somewhere else, and that's nice. And as much as you mentioned it, doesn't seem to be any bad blood between them if they're like chilling on a helicopter together. Management, like coach and Brolin, just the three of them. So that's cool. So back to the point, I do think Spinx can be great, but also can be awful in big games. Exertion, his drop off is also big. So to answer your question, I think these are the two players that were capping them from making deeper runs on the most cases. These are the two players.
Interesting you say Spinx, right? I think Spinx, with the positions that he plays on certain maps, he can have a lot of impact, but in other positions, it's also, he can't really do anything if the team isn't having success with finding space and making moves. So I find it harder to say like him. You could talk about maybe the impact his introduction to the team had on Jimmy's output and what is the correlation or causation there. That's a conversation that, you know, I would entertain. But
I think ultimately, as much as I say, like, I think he went with the wrong side, I also don't think he necessarily had a better option. Yeah. Because it's easier to make these changes than to make the other changes. Like there is, like, who else are you gonna bring in to be the IGL of the team? That's a tricky one.
Isn't Zelex an aggressive rifler?
But yeah, they will,
but not as much as Zershin. I don't think so. They've said that they're effectively, the solution is that Joe's going to take up Jimmy roles, Zershin is going to go into Brolin roles, and Zelex is going to take up Zershin roles.
And this is also what I don't like, is like now your three players are just like not playing what they used to play.
But I don't think that it is quite as black and white as that, because I think that a lot of positions that Zershin plays already will be this, what I said before, like on T side, he would have played a lot of the same positions as the captain. You know, he would be the one entering into bomb sites, like going first. Obviously, Brolin would take up a lot of that as well on occasion, but there was a lot of fluidity between those two in terms of what they were doing early round. And I do think that Zershin can still call his own openings and things like that, and be more of an opener for the team than the like standard in game leader, who's more setting up the first guy, or like the, you know, the opening moves and things like that. So I do think that, I think there's a world where there's enough fluidity there where Zershin keeps maybe a lot of his T spots, at least, maybe if not CT. I do expect more changes. And then Zelex can have a little bit more freedom, rather than, you know, always being the first guy and always making the openings and things like that. Because if you look at his profile, he's not as aggressive as Zershin. He's not a Zershin type player. He is more of an aggressive star, but not to that degree.
It's curious, because when we're talking, like, let's say T-side focus, for example, if I use like NAVI as a blueprint, I look at exertion more like Makazi than I do the positions Alexi would play. Like Ancient comes to mind, right? Yeah. Right. But then Alexi is a little bit more sidelined, because they also have Immer in the mix there as well, right? So it's a different mixing pot. So that Brolin, in some of these games that were tougher or tighter in playoffs, he would be standing up and delivering Obviously, people are going to look at stats and be like, no, that's not the case. But just certain impact in games where other players would go missing. And for me, the concern with promoting Exertion into a position of now more pressure, even though he was already essentially fulfilling that role, it's quite concerning because, like, even though in some of these games in playoffs I'm watching, he's still making the correct moves, it's essentially his responsibility to be successful in these moves the same way he would in the group stage, right? You're practicing something, you're successful with it. You do it in the group where the pressure's low, you're getting away with it. That's why you're winning these areas, right? Then if you move into the playoffs and it's not working, sure, you're losing to Vitality a lot of the time, right? We give you that one, right? And everyone's losing to Vitality. But then when you're losing games to teams that aren't Vitality, which is where the main criticism of MOUZ comes from.
That is this year. I think the narrative of them losing to Vitality was kind of a lazy one that got outdated quite fast because to interrupt you for a second, but it was obviously they end the year by the FaZe playoff loss, which is a huge one. They lose to Aurora and Krakow. They lose to Vitality and Spirit as well. Then they lose to Vitality again, but also to Perivision and Cluj. That eliminates them. Then where I think this is kind of where the lineup kind of died is losing to Foot at EPL in the playoffs, and then going to Blast and losing to Mongols and then to 9Z after that. And that series of 3 losses in a row, last time that this lineup will have 3 losses in a row. That's it. That was GG. And especially the Foot one where they are super big favorites to win that title, and was obvious that this was not going to happen.
Yeah, there was a bit of that at APL.
Look, I think I generally agree because, like, you were also talking about, he backed the wrong gang, and later that he didn't have a better option. Like, you can't kick Spinx and keep Jimmy after the numbers that he's been putting up recently. Yes, it is partly because
but you could have kicked Jimmy and Exertion.
Yeah, you could have gotten JL and the kyxsan down the line or whatever it is. Like, of course, that would have been a possibility. I don't know. I'm obviously the jury's out on Xertion, whether he's going to be able to rise to the increased pressure. A lot of it is already what's been happening with MOUZ, and obviously it is part of the problem that's been happening with MOUZ. At the same time, you do get a really good closer, and if we can expect JL to go anywhere near the level that he's been on before, he was the guy who would step up in.
But do you think
moments.
this is a permanent situation for JL?
It is a trial. It is 100% a trial. It's not just a loan for like 2 tournaments. It is a trial.
Okay.
This is a real trial.
Isn't it absolutely insanely weird that he is on the bench, on the sub for NAVI for the major, after going and playing 2 tournaments with MOUZ, knowing what the plan is, like fully being integrated in the lineup, and then actually being a part of a different team. And this is not like he's bench and he's trialing and then maybe he joins right after that. He's like probably not going to play for NAVI, but he's going to be at the major wearing a NAVI jersey, doing like NAVI fucking content and stuff, and his content. That's a bit of a weird vibe. I know they don't really have much of what to do about it, but it feels a bit, I mean, it is what it is. I think MOUZ have kind of given up of this remaining of the season. This is just, everything's kind of an experiment. But I do also think if it goes super bad for these 3 tournaments that they have, they might just say like Exertion, this ain't it. We might just go for kyxsan. They also have already Zelex integrated. Maybe they want to keep it with him. So they again, then maybe JL, they can sign him. They don't have to sign him. They can go for different variations. They're not really stuck with the roster and in the same way they would have been if they just decided to do this after the major. So I think making changes was great. It was super necessary. It was kind of GG. Whether it's not gonna work or not, I think a lot of it just depends on the Exertion. So, but it's a difficult but a fair position.
Nothing changed there though, Prof, because that's kind of what it's been anyway, right? Like, it's on like Torji and Exertion because of how active they are with calling openings of rounds, making sense with the positions and the roles that they play within the team. I think one thing that you discussed there, or that we've discussed, is Exertion with pressure. And I think in this scenario, with this tail end of the season, the pressure is alleviated again because the expectation from themselves is not we have to make playoffs every time. It's where this is a new thing and we're learning and we're to give ourselves time to get there. Obviously, they want to compete and go deep, as everybody would, but I also think there's no community sentiment there that's like MOUZ have to go deep, right? MOUZ have to make a playoff run. That changes too. So
it's not about have to go deep. It's about like they have been doing that. That was never the problem. It was, can they actually win?
Sure.
Obviously, then nobody's gonna now be like, no, but now they actually do have to win, like in these next 3 tournaments. You know, that's where it is. I do think that there's still an expectation for them to be in the playoffs for these 3 tournaments,
Really?
or at least
Okay.
at least be somewhere competitive to go into the playoffs. Because of ultimately, like how many teams can we say are unequivocally better than them? Can we say more than 5 names? Probably not.
Spirit, Falcons, FURIA, NAVI. Vitality.
Yeah.
I don't say Vitality because they're kind of like
That's
the God
just,
Emperors.
yeah,
It'd be a
like,
little bit
you know,
disrespectful to bring
yeah.
them into the conversation.
Yeah, but I said, better than them, which is obviously that
Sure.
include. But that's the 5 teams you would probably now, especially after Spirit's run, would put above MOUZ.
Paravision?
Sure, oh yeah, sure. Actually, yeah.
So
That's
Navy foot?
Let's say around that. Well,
We're starting to scrape, but maybe Mongols,
still,
they did
like,
beat them.
It's still top 8, right? Like Astana
Sure.
has a top 8. Like there's still somewhere on that edge, at least, if not even a little bit better, even with these changes, I think.
There's a diminished field at both of the events that they're attending to some degree. Obviously, Astana doesn't have
tough.
Yeah, no Vitality, no Navi, but it still has Furia, Falcon, Spirit, Aurora, Paravision, the Mongols, G2. So that's still a scary field. CAC, on the other hand, that one is Falcons, Aurora, Paravision, Mongols, MOUZ. And if it's an 8-team playoff, it's not. It's only a 4-team playoff. Okay, well, that one's going to be harder for them to make the playoffs there. But Astana, you could definitely have that conversation. And the major, who knows what's going to happen with that one.
I don't think it's 4.
Isn't it? Well, I was just
16?
looking at the CAC thing, and it has just semifinals and then grand final.
Oh, I thought it was the same as before. Okay, well, whatever. Okay.
It has playoff single elimination.
Yeah, they did this weird thing last time where they played the quarterfinals without, like in the arena, but without a crowd. So I guess this is the move. Okay.
Yeah.
I actually didn't notice this before.
But it doesn't have a quarterfinal bracket on the...
Yeah. I know that, but I was just wondering whether that could be our mistake, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, but the last thing I would say on this MOUZ situation, I'm excited for the Zelex promo. There's been a lot of hype on Twitter in terms of people saying, oh, when's he going to get promoted? And obviously we got to see him once, but it's not really a lot. But, MOUZ have done a very good job at when they and who they have promoted up from their academy. So there's no reason for us to think that Zelex would be a misfire. But overall, I think that the only player, if it was me in Sycrone or MOUZ's management position, that would have been safe when making these changes would have been Spinx, which I think to some people would sound crazy. But I think the quality of player and the fact he knows he's been part of a winning roster before, that's the player that I think everybody else I could make an argument for replacing. Right? Jimmy's performance recently, Torji is hit or miss, right?
Yeah.
Exertion, the same. So I think that Spinx would have been the only one when the discussions happened that in my mind would have been safe. So yeah, this is where we found
I agree
ourselves.
with that sentiment, even though I don't similar to Prof, I don't see him like as this big playoffs player that you can blame for anything at all. But realistically, none of the others are, even to a worse degree. So it's like you can't make that case.
Okay. Do we have anything else we want to say about MOUZ?
No, I think one thing that I wanted to say, and you already touched on it a bit with giving sycrone props for taking responsibility for all this. I think time and time again he's done that through every change in this roster, maybe except for the one with Shuhei, which was a bit dodgy in terms of how it was explained or not explained. But like all of these moves that have been somewhat out there in terms of MOUZ, he's like continuously promoted from NXT, made some of these like a little bit awkward moves in terms of the Brolin, promotion as an in-game leader, and there's this like little change of the whole structure of the team. That obviously, like, I think we can call that a success. And I think the moves that he's made for the past 3 years, ever since he's taken over, or whatever it is now, I think almost every single one has been a success to some degree. And so that's why I'm just kind of reserving judgment for now, because I feel like with every move, they've become a little bit better, a little bit more consistent. And so I'm not so quick to be like, no, this is going to be shit, because, he's got a proven track record. And I think he deserves a little bit of leeway.
And it's all right. We won't talk about, whether we find them interesting or anything like that anymore, right? He's Sycrone is I don't know why he just didn't say my name. Right? That's the thing with that interview he gave. If he had just said my name, it would have been fine. But he pulled all the other people into it, and they were like, "Are we mean to MOUZ?" And I'm like, "No,
I mean, it's only Pixel, I guess, as well.
Is he?
I think he's
no,
not.
He said the cast. He was talking about the talent.
No,
He
no,
specifically.
he mentioned-
Maui as well is like one of those people who just kind of harps on that detail as well a lot in terms
I
of
just
like them
won't
being
talk about
Aurora
it much
and things
anymore.
like that.
That's my
Yeah.
solution.
I
So
don't
I just
think you're
won't
the
even
only one
bother.
there, so I don't know if he would necessarily had like you specifically only at his
I
event.
don't know,
so.
man. When you're talking about the event that you're at and you're using like the talent and saying
Sure.
the cast, right? You know, whether or not he was talking about me
Fair
directly, I'll be honest. If again with the sentiment I gave earlier, that little bit I prefaced, that's from the Counter-Strike fan, and the Counter-Strike fan in me didn't really enjoy watching them disappear in playoff games, right? I you know, whether anyway, I don't want to get stuck in this.
that whole ESL skit, you know, it was it hit the spot.
Yeah,
in terms of, you know, we were just missing trophies.
Yeah, no, yeah, with Jimmy and Torji. Yeah,
that's the one.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, why did all these guys have so much aura?
Do we want to say anything about MOUZ, or everyone happy?
No,
I'm happy.
let's see them play. Excited to. There's something to be excited about.
I just
we'll
want
keep
to
it
see
about
JL
the,
play, like,
about the
again.
Counter-Strike. He's playing right now. He's on the top of a tower playing a 1v1 against Dima
There you go.
in Lithuania. So
That's not what I meant, but okay. But
he's playing.
you know, one thing that we haven't necessarily talked about actually with that is
MOUZ or
not-
Dima?
Huh?
Sorry.
JL.
JL.
Yeah.
So if we expect him to slot into Jimmy's spots, I do foresee a little bit of the same issue as happened with Jimmy, you know, where he's obviously had to take up a lot more passive roles, a
No
lot
way,
more of the
bro.
supportive ones. And I'm not.
No way.
You don't think that will happen?
I think that JL will make his feelings very clear. I think major MVP JL will not be pushed around and
He said himself that he's in for some role changes, so we'll see about that.
I agree he's going to have
it.
role changes. It's not about the role changes. It's about the
About how he
support that he
plays
gets in those positions.
Okay.
And I don't think that JL is going to be anyone's bitch.
I think that's great. I think if that's the case, I think that's great because that's what MOUZ need. They need a strong, like somebody strong in those positions, you know, who will just tell them like, okay.
I mean, he is the X factor player, right?
Exactly.
Like if you think about what they're missing, you know, big moments in playoffs, that's the bullshit that he built his whole year in NAVI on. Like he wasn't consistently that good. He was huge
in the big
huge moments. 1v3s, 1v2s, whatever, you know, 11-11 kind of situations. That's where he would be like, what the fuck is this bullshit? Like he could fit in FaZe, like the type of rounds he was winning. So if that can transfer, but it's like it's been a while. It's been a while. I don't know if that's realistic, and but it's needed. It's definitely needed.
Yeah.
That's why I'm thinking. Just the last thing on this is like obviously the whole like PR angle and like if they want to buy him back and blah blah, and maybe he comes in for JL. But he's a kid as well. Like, do they need another kid on this lineup? Like, at least JL's a bit older, has a bit, you know, tenure of winning. Obviously, major MVP, different titles with NAVI. There's something behind them that he can look back and like have confidence from. You don't have like confidence. You build confidence by doing stuff, not by just like imagining and having like a nice group of people. Like that's what they're missing. So I hope he can like on the server be good enough for the rest to come into play, because that's the baseline that is necessary.
Okay. Let's jump into our next topic. We'll put a pin in MOUZ for now, and we'll talk about it again once we see them in the server. This was a big one that broke during the IEM Rio. It was before the second quarter final. FURIA put out like a tweet, like there was going to be some type of announcement, and there was a graphic, and it said something in Portuguese that had the professor written on it. We had obviously heard about this internally because they had to work that out with ESL that this was going to go down. So we knew that this was going to be happening, at least from the broadcast perspective. But the long and the short of it is FalleN announced his retirement, which is obviously not effective immediately. He will be playing out the remainder of the year, not just the season. But it was a pretty emotional thing. He did it in Portuguese, and I saw a lot of people after like, why didn't they have a live translator? And it's like, he's doing it to his Brazilian fans in the arena, guys. Like, and if you can't tell what's going on with the tone, you might have to go get your social IQ checked out, because when everyone's crying and he's getting emotional, his wife's running up on stage, what do you think's happening? Where is like he's announcing a new mouse pad or something? You know, of course.
I think it's also like, I don't think anyone expected them to talk for that long, if I'm completely honest. And also, that's the slowest Brazilian Portuguese from FalleN. Usually it's like every time he's like, do you want to say anything in Portuguese?
Bars,
and he does
yeah.
like 400,000 words per minute. And this was like very, very measured. I was in the gym, like I was like on the treadmill. I was like, this is taking forever. I'm just going to listen to this I'm just going to listen to this and do the treadmill until he finishes it. Like, I can't do this. This is too long.
Bro, you can't be like that. If that doesn't pull on your heartstrings, then nothing will.
It was good. It's just my, my treadmill skill is not that good. That's a problem. That was the joke I was making. Okay.
Okay. For seeing it, right, it was obviously a very emotional time. His wife running up on stage with him and stuff, and then he did the little quick English bit at the end. But if people want to go see the full length of his speech, ESL have like a translated version.
Yeah, I don't think to build on Prof's point, I don't think he said the word retirement once in Portuguese. It's just so funny. It was always like, but it's time to do other things and things like that. Like every time it was like he came to the word, like he never said that. It's just very funny.
It must have been hard though, and especially once you got up there, right? And then it's like, oh shit, like this is real now.
Yeah.
Oh, and obviously they're counting the days. They made a whole bit about it. It does make you much more present, right? When you know that, okay, shit, 240 something days to go. Like it makes you very present of the time, which I guess I was hoping it would have produced a better result for FURIA at the event than what ended up unfolding. But then again, it probably applied a lot of pressure to not only himself, but his teammates. You saw how emotional the players were getting. I understand it happened on the quarterfinal and then they weren't playing until the semifinal. But
I think it was a fucking masterstroke, man. Like, imagine if it worked.
Oh, yeah,
like,
for
obviously,
sure.
you put so much pressure on Vitality as well with that, It's just like even more support towards FalleN and everything. Like this massive, like somehow he always builds on these magic moments, and just I could see it. For some reason, I was sold for a moment. I was like, maybe.
I think he's created a very interesting dynamic with the retirement now from a viewer perspective. Right now, knowing that the opportunities of him getting back out in the server and competing in Cologne, he's going back there. Oh shit, that's where he won a major 10 years ago. Or can FURIA lift a big title? Can they? Every time now, you're buying in even more. And I don't know why anybody wouldn't like FURIA. They're a very likable team, but you feel like you would buy in even more now because of the impending retirement of FalleN at the end of the year. And I was mentioning during some of my casts, especially like I think we were doing some stuff during the group stage. And this is before we knew that this had all gone down. We didn't learn this until I think it was the last day of the groups or maybe the media day. And I was talking, I was like, yeah, how many more opportunities are we going to get to see FalleN compete in front of a Brazilian crowd for a title, right? And some guy tweeted at me and he's like, I'm so tired of people talking about FalleN. How many more times could he get to the playoffs? Man, he's been close to retirement for 6 years and he's not going anywhere. And then it couldn't have aged any more beautifully for me. And I was like, I just tweeted at the guy with a emoji of milk. It's like, but this is the thing. I think people like, sure, FalleN has, but he is the most active in terms of talking about it out of anybody.
Yeah.
Right. He's been very candid about it, which I think is great to be able to hear his mindset with it. And
this reminds me, there's this. I'm sorry to.
Yeah, you're right.
There's a Jimmy Carr tour. I don't know if you people know the comedian, but he had a tour that was called the Best of Ultimate Gold Greatest Hits, and it's basically like the ultimate final definitive absolute last dance for FalleN. It's like we'll have the last dance for the next 10 tournaments that he plays until the end of the year, and that's fucking great. I'm not saying that as a bad thing either, because we fucking finally know. That's the point. Like, we actually fucking know now.
Bro, honestly, I think the moment when his wife just runs on stage, she must be thinking like, finally, this motherfucker said it. It's like he's been promising this for like 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm tired of this bullshit like flying around all the time. It's been going on forever. And honestly, I do believe every time he was speaking about this, he was honest. But every time something would change, something would happen. Something, last year he was supposed to probably retire at the end of last year. Things kind of picked up after, YEKINDAR and MOUZ, and everybody's like, fuck it, we ball. We go for another one. And now it's out there. It's the likelihood of him going back from this, very, very low. Very, very low. I think,
I want to do the big old, legend of the game. He's done so much for Counter-Strike. But the problem is when he actually retires, then we'll do all that, right?
Yeah.
Right now, his legacy, even though we know when it's going to end, is not, and actually he'll probably continue to build on it once he's done, right? Like, I don't imagine he's going to walk away from Counter-Strike completely, just find himself somewhere a little bit more solid without travel. But obviously this man has done so much for Counter-Strike. I would say a top 3, if not a top 5 most influential person in Counter-Strike history ever, right? I'm talking the competitive landscape side of things, but you know, you think of certain players, and he's one that is like Simple's another one that comes to mind, right? In terms of, you know, players who you know, well, they're missing the word right now, but
defining. Yeah,
it's probably a bigger and more grandiose word. Maybe it's good that I don't have it in my brain. Either way, that, you know, he's one of those
Use
figures.
Later for a cast.
And it's and again, he's given us another narrative that we get to continue along for the rest of the year, watching and enjoying as part of the FURIA. So, gentlemen, I wanted to just do a Skinionaire, just a little bit about FalleN's history, because he's been part of this game for 20 plus years. Transcends. Thank you very much, Nopi. That's great. Transcends. That's what I was looking for. You got there. So yeah, let's just jump into this. This is, you know, I tried not to make these too difficult because I think I've been a little bit harsh lately with how hard I've been on my Skinionaires. Everybody knows what to do in chat right now. There's a code word. You need to type that in. We're going to do 5 questions. They're multiple choice. Every question Prof and Striker get correct. We're going to move the slider up 1. There's only 5 questions this week. If all 5 questions are correct, one lucky winner in chat could win a skin voucher valued at $50. Okay, everybody ready and raring? Are you two you up to date on your FalleN history?
Not really.
I'm
but
not
let's
confident
see.
after the last few, man. I'm just
like I said, I've tried to make them easier, and if it's still too hard this time,
about that, but let's go.
If it's still too hard this time, I'll get Dimitri to do the next one. All right, let's get into it. Question number 1. FalleN was a part of what legendary North American organization in 1.6? Was it Team 3D, Complexity, or Jack's Money Crew?
I love the typo here, by the way.
What did I do?
Is this a typo, or is this like a trick question? It says apart, not apart.
Oh, whatever, man. I did it in Notepad. I just was okay. Well, you know what I meant.
Yeah. Okay. I never know. Maybe it's a trick question. You know, maybe which of these teams was he not a part of? Right.
You wouldn't think English is my first language, would you? Okay. Locking in Complexity. Correct answer is Complexity. Okay, bit of a delay on that one. I really felt the build up. Okay, 1 from 1, nice and easy. He even won a tournament back with Complexity, didn't he? Anyway,
I think so. I think there was one like American tournament.
Been going for a long time. Okay, question number 2. In 2011, in an interview with HLTV, FalleN said Source was to be a more what game than 1.6? Beautiful, successful, tactical.
Tactical. I'm pretty sure this is the quote.
Yeah, very famous one that gets brought up every now and again.
Locking in C, tactical. Correct answer is tactical.
More people have said that over like around that time. I don't remember. It was like.
I mean, what do you think, Chad? You played both competitively.
I think that the power of the util was stronger in Source, which can give you that perspective. Like the also the ability, the type of smokes you're able to throw with skyboxes and stuff like that. So I just think that the nuance of 1.6 was much higher. Like,
I mean, I think when people say tactical, they mean like tactics executions were more of a factor. That's
unless you were abusing the DX level, so you didn't really get flashed as much as you should have, and then life was a bit easier. Anyway, that's some Source frog stuff right there. That's for me and the old boys, and then a couple of old boys will know that stuff. But okay, 2 from 2. You're trending quite nicely now. The FalleN played 1.6 Source, CS:GO, CS2, and even Crossfire, guys. Yeah. He's been over all of it. Okay, question number 3. What was the name of FalleN's first major team? Keed, Kaboom, Games Academy.
First major team.
Well, at a major. First team at a major.
Yeah. I think it would be...
Which one came first? I'm just trying to think. Kaboom was first. Kaboom was first, right?
So... Kaboom was the team in 2015 when they played the X Games tournament, when they broke out.
Yeah. So it's that. It's that because they were keyed in...
But did they... did they swap orgs before the tournament? I think
they did that a couple of times, didn't they? Did that Luminosity to SK?
Oh, that was a big one. But I think they didn't play. I don't think there's Kaboom stickers in the game. I think there's Keyed Stars stickers. I think
you
it's
might be right,
Keystars.
because I just realized the Katowice I was thinking about. I saw him in Katowice 2015, and that's the first tournament they played. Like I did an interview, like I just remember. I guess it's Keed.
You think 2015 was the first major that FalleN played at? I'm giving you a chance here, man. You think the first major they played at?
It wasn't that far.
It was 2015.
It was around then for sure. I just don't remember which one was the first one. Whatever. Okay, like just answer. I don't know. I've lost myself.
So it must be Games Academy in that case, but I do not remember him playing Games Academy.
No. That's the one. That's the odd one out. I'm just trying to think which one came first between Kaboom and Keed. But my first instinct was Kaboom. I don't know. And then I thought about this interview I did with him, but that might have been a later major. I'm not sure.
Now,
Chad, just answer the question.
There's a high probability. There's a high probability I fucked up here. So let me just quickly check, because I think maybe I'm wrong.
Okay. Let's see this.
I have to double check right now, because I put Kaboom, because I remember talking to FalleN at one of the early, maybe it was 2015. I swear. Okay, so I swear it was Kaboom, but
it wasn't, or
by the looks of things, I'm just checking. So Katowice 2014 was would have been one.
Fuck yes, let's go.
You guys are right. I'm wrong. The wrong. So the green will show for Kaboom here, but the correct answer is Keed. So you guys are right. Yeah.
So Kaboom came first, but they never played a major under that.
Here's the thing. It's just I remember in the early days talking with FalleN at the major, right? One of the early majors, and we were at, you guys know, in Katowice, the place that we did the podcast in the middle of the roundabout.
Yeah.
So that was where we used to do the old parties. And I remember being at the party and talking with FalleN, and he was asking, like, how does it work with the split for Vox Eminor and the sticker money and stuff with you guys? And I was like, well, it doesn't really work with, it's only us plus Gomez plus the owner. That's it. Like, we're not even an org. Like, we're just a bunch of dudes.
Yeah.
And I thought that was 2014, but I was wrong. It was 2015. So it was Keed. All right. Well, that's fine. We all learned something here today. Great.
Oh, man.
Great. Okay.
It's only been 11 years.
Fine. That's great. You guys are going to smash it then. Thank God. Okay. I'm baffled he didn't play at the earlier ones. All right. He was at the LAN qualifier with Kaboom, then played the major with Keed. Oh, okay. All right. Well, fuck, I should have done some more research today. I kind of blew through it. 2 more questions to get 5 correct here. Let's go into question number 4. Let's hope this one's right. What was FalleN's highest ever placement in the HLTV top 20? Striker has to get this.
Number 2.
Prof got it. All right. Locking in.
Full Zero number 1, FalleN number 2. 2016, right?
For a moment, if I'm not crazy, but yeah.
2016, yeah. They won 2 majors in 2016.
Then he was 6 in 2017, or was something like that, I think.
Yes, 6 was, yes. Yeah, correct. Okay, so this is it. 1 more question. We get all 5 right, and 1 lucky winner at home. And this is one now that after I fucked up the Kaboom one, I'm not confident in. So let's find out. Maybe you get 5 out of 5 from default. Which one of these Liquid alumni did FalleN not play on a team with? Elise, Stewie, Twist, NAF.
Oh, okay.
So NAF he did.
Stewie and MIBR?
Yes.
He replaced Twists, no? He was a replacement for Twist when Twists left at the end of like COVID online.
That's not what that's the one that I'm kind of. But it must have been Elise too, right? Because that's like Elise was there the whole time. So Elise
and NAF.
It must be Twists. It must be Twists. Because I think NAF was there. NAF and Elise were there for a long part of that.
Do we have an answer?
It must be.
Yeah, let's go for Twists.
All right, locking in Twist. Correct answer is Twist.
Ooh.
Okay, 5 from 5. Now, look, if somebody goes through and sees that they did play together, let us know. Either way, I'm giving you guys 5 from 5 here.
Quick check.
But you were right. Elise and NAF, they played together when FalleN had come over in that pandemic period, and obviously Stewie 2K in MIBR when Stewie and Tarek went over to MIBR. So, yeah, he's played with a whole bunch of North American players, which makes a lot of sense.
They played 0 maps together.
There you go.
On HLTV.
Diogo K666. I just saw him in chat earlier. He was writing some comments, so shout out.
All right. Well, talk to Lucas right now, Diogo, and we'll get you it all sorted. You're a lucky man. You win a $50 skin voucher today. Lucas will chat to you now. He'll probably ask for your Steam link, and you guys can sort that out and keep trucking. Now, guys, as mentioned a little bit earlier, this is for the people in chat and people watching at home. We're going to be condensing this, still going to keep it around 2 hours. So the Vitality versus Astralis conversation, all that will probably be waiting until next week. We'll see how quickly we can blow through the rest of this. Just quickly before we cap off the FURIA topic, this creates an interesting scenario for FURIA, where at the end of the year, they know they're going to be out without such an influential figure, first of all, as FalleN, and second of all, they'll be out without an in-game leader. So what does this mean for the future of FURIA for you guys? Do you think this kind of shakes the foundation of the team, knowing this is only temporary? Do you think this fires them up? What do we think?
I'll just say one thing first, and just for people that might be thinking, oh, maybe he's going to become a coach. He's not going to become a coach. I'm like 99% sure that he wants to just be in Brazil.
He wants to stay put.
He doesn't want to travel. So I think he'll obviously be involved in Counter-Strike and working and doing stuff. From what I heard, it is like FURIA do want him to stay on as like an ambassador, co-streamer kind of figure. They all have different games. They have like the football thing that they're doing and all of these things where they want him to be like a face of that. And that would be like kind of like Gaules 2.0 essentially for Brazil. So, and he would obviously be mega successful with that. There's no doubt about that.
No doubt about that.
So I think he will remain like a part of the org from like a perspective of influence on Brazil and stuff like this. But he won't be competing in any form. He won't be doing desks in English, even though he would be absolutely awesome there as well.
Anyone who's worth their soul is going to make more than enough money playing that they don't have to go and become a caster or an analyst. So, you know, they will have a scenario.
If we get him for like one day for like a tournament or something, that would be like the most that's going to happen.
How good.
But that's off the top of my head. Striker, now to you.
That's just, just had a thought about all these Moldoy rumors, and how much it has to do with FalleN leaving and all these things, because how deep does this go effectively? How much like does FURIA eventually just go back to a Brazilian team because Moldoy leaves or YEKINDAR gets a different offer as well? If this team kind of ends up falling apart towards the end of the year, right? I think the biggest issue for me is, how do you replace FalleN?
You can't.
You can't. Like, okay, so you replace FalleN the upper. Obviously, that wasn't such a they did a really good thing with Moldoy, but wasn't such a hard job as replacing FalleN the leader, FalleN the captain, like all of the roles that he's kind of fulfilled in that team, right? Because it's not going to happen in Brazil, I think, because who could possibly replace FalleN as a Brazilian caller?
I don't think you do that though. I don't think the idea is to replace FalleN. You kind of need to create a new identity of what it's going to be, right? Because FalleN, we can talk about his impact on the game. We can talk about his in-game leading, him as a captain. I think one of the keys is with FalleN is not only, does he have a great mind for the game, he's also a really good facilitator with the pieces he has and how to get the most out of them, and also to give them the autonomy to make FalleN works now because of YEKINDAR. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but YEKINDAR has a very strong macro understanding. He has a very strong micro understanding. He talks very good theory of the game. And essentially, FalleN is so good at bringing that with the rest of the pieces together and knowing when to give room and when to take room and when it needs to be. He's been doing this for so long, nobody has that level of experience. So what FalleN has to offer is irreplaceable. It's the same with any leader like this. It's the same if karrigan was to go, right? So the future of FURIA will depend on, first of all, I imagine what YEKINDAR and Moldoy want to do with their future, because it would be great to return FURIA to a full Brazilian roster. We all know you want to get us insane.
That's not gonna happen.
Yeah, insane with kyxsan, with Yuri. Get yourself, I don't know, a fucking.
There's no reason for them to limit themselves by speaking Brazilian. I'm not saying they can't get Insani. They can get Insani, but why would they get rid of YEKINDAR? Why wouldn't YEKINDAR just be the new IGL of the team? That's
what I thought might happen at first, but I'm not 100% certain I want that for YEKINDAR. No, I'm not going to lie. There's a difference between his macro understanding and all the stuff that he brings to the team, from his position to being a leader. This is a stupid thing to say, and it will sound so fucking simplistic, but he is the guy who's literally this close to the monitor. Like, you have to have an overview of what's happening. Like, people have to call for him when people die.
He requires such good comms, Like,
he needs really good comms, because he's just so hyper focused on what he's doing and things like that. And he can have all that knowledge outside of the game and like in the prep and all that stuff. It is different to do it, to be the sole guy responsible with in-game leading, with doing the whole thing. No, you just have to take a step back a little bit, like watch what your team is doing. Like, both his play style and just the way that he is, I think would not fit him being like 100% full-on captain. He can be a really good secondary caller. I'm sure he's in the positions and all that stuff, but not as a full-time leader. I just wouldn't want that for him. So I feel like it has to come from outside, and I don't know how you do that realistically.
Well, the good thing is we have the rest of the year to continue to have this conversation and see what comes up for FURIA. So they have a long lead time.
Yeah, they've also kind of admitted that they don't really know the answer at the moment, and they're just giving themselves the time, so realistically it's not YEKINDAR. Otherwise that would have already been kind of the plan, okay, for the rest of the year, to be like slowly, handing over the reins, giving him a little bit more responsibility, prepping him for that move. I really don't think that's what it is, even though, on paper maybe it would make sense.
Okay, let's put a cap on the FURIA conversation. We've probably got about 10 minutes left of this, so we'll fly through some of these side stories. And again, we will talk about Rio, Vitality, etc. all next episode, which we're going to do on, was it 28th? I think it was.
Yes. So a week
we'll get to that.
now.
We'll get to that. Counter-Strike ain't going anywhere, guys. Okay. I'll fly through a couple of these. This one's not hugely important. HOTU, they benched Duke for Shura, and then Kalash left. So that's what happened with HOTU off of, I want to say, a disappointing Rio, but they eliminated Legacy, and I don't think people's expectations of this team were astronomically high. So, yeah. Flicking on to the next one, Gaming Gladiators drama. So this one I don't fully understand, so I don't want to speak to it too much, but essentially they benched Phelps. They're bringing in Fur for the major, which is some kind of weird... That's fucked. Like when you think about that, he was the man who was meant to replace Fur back in the day, right? And that level of output, it's kind of wild.
It's some Greek mythology level like bullshit, just like repeating cycles that we are witnessing here. It's yeah.
But the drama is the fact that they terminated his contract, and on top of that apparently he had given up his salary or part of his salary to make the changes to bring in Henny and Lucan. And then what unfolded from there, I was talking to some people in Rio, but I don't feel I have a good enough grasp to comment publicly on the decision, so I won't.
For me, the idea I don't understand what happened before. Maybe, I really don't know if it was reasonable to remove Phelps or not, but the idea that Fur is the guy that you're bringing in. How many million players are there in Brazil? Like, 5?
So many options,
CS players in Brazil, and you bring in Fur. Like, this is the only guy you can find. His last game, I am Rio 2022 Challenger stage.
Imperial.
Hello.
Right?
What is going on?
Well, they wanted to bring the average age up even more. I think they were already the oldest team at the major. They just wanted to kind of keep that up because they're a bunch of old boys over there.
Average age 30.6.
Insane.
I've never seen it over 30.
Well, it's going to be the Boomer League.
Yeah. This is insane.
It's going to be something that, Martin wanted to do as a, bring together all the old boys and we'll put on a league. But okay, that's kind of crazy. Okay. Next one that we'll jump into. So over there at NIP, they benched Wrinkle and they replaced him with stavn. We haven't seen stavn in some time. So this one did come as a bit of a shock, but I think the most shocking part of this is the fact that Wrinkle was an AWPer and stavn was not, right? Obviously, stavn did some secondary AWPing in his time. I think that this consensus I saw from the Roll Cell Andes and the stats men out there was that having a flexible hybrid like stavn, who is also going to be able to be more than serviceable on rifles and in a bit more faster, upbeat style, can fit Snappy's way of calling. That was what I saw some of those guys coming to the conclusion of, which hearing it from that perspective, I can get behind. For me, I'm not sure how much it moves the needle for NIP with stavn not having played in such a long period of time. What do you make of this one, Striker?
I think Wrinkle was always going to be on the way out with the way that he was playing for the past, I don't know what it is, like a good half of a year. I think he started off well and then very quickly it just went downhill. From what I know, like the atmosphere in the team was also pretty shit. He was looking for a way out for a while from what I understand.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think it didn't necessarily come as a surprise that he was the one on the way out. We know how difficult it is these days to replace hoppers, and so for somebody like stavn to feel like, okay, this is the way that I increase my value at a time when obviously my value is kind of low after having been out of the game for like a year. completely understand that from like an on-paper perspective. Like it is the move to make right now because, yeah, how many other operas do you have to contend against? Not many. Is it going to work? Is another question, I think, because I have no idea. I have no idea what to expect from stavn as a primary opera. I also don't know whether this is a real transition to a primary opera, or if this is the first team that we will see just working with a hybrid, like really very pure,
Liquid did
very
it.
hybridy.
I mean, Heroic now, I guess, is the closest to that, even though I haven't watched,
but I mean,
watched them
that's
too much.
obviously just like a temporary solution until they can sort out whatever the fuck is going on with Alcaran.
They ain't Alcaran's done over there, mate.
That's what I think as well. But ultimately, you know, there's gonna be an opera coming in. I'm pretty sure. I don't know who. I'm just saying that out of my ass, by the way.
So was I about him being done over there. I just don't see him returning to that roster. Like it's just he's been out for so long now. And if there's visa issues that are cropped up, I'm sure that it's highly contentious, especially for a young man like him. So I can't imagine, you know, it's and especially Heroic not talking about it to any great length. There must be something there that's behind the closed doors.
Yeah, the devil's advocate in me thinks, okay, I can see all the reasons behind this. I can understand the rationale from NIP, from stavn, and all that stuff. Is it going to really change so much for an NIP to suddenly become so competitive? I don't know.
Not really.
Honestly, people have so many opinions about NIP and Wrinkle. I'm just confused based on what did they actually watch them play. I don't remember seeing them ever anywhere. Like I've seen the only thing when I think about NIP in the last like year, I remember Kaspersky on train. That's the only thing that comes to my brain.
Round.
Nothing, literally nothing else. Like when did people watch all of these NIP games to have such deep opinions on Wrinkle? I'm just impressed. Like shout out to you guys. You're doing something I'm not.
Okay, one final
Talk about
one.
stavn. Can we share? I guess we can.
Yeah, you're the boss around here.
I don't know. Yeah, but he'll be on the next show as a guest for like the opening part. So we'll be talking to him about the transition where he's been up to and all of this and going to NIP. So we'll have a guest on. We also had some other guests planned, but the timing didn't really work out. So that's probably going to happen after this next little stint of American tournaments coming around.
So that's for everybody the 28th, which is just in less than a week. We'll have stavn on the show. We'll kick off the show with that. We'll probably do that for about half an hour, 45 minutes, and then we'll kick into the gear of whatever normal news there is, and we'll pick up on some of this IEM Rio stuff. Okay, final piece of news, and then we can get out of here. Graph 2 was finally released out of the beta branch into the game itself. That happened while I was traveling home from Rio. And they even did another decent, sizable update last night that impacted a couple of other details. Now, the two of you were saying before that you haven't had a proper opportunity to test it just yet. I was playing a little bit today. I also jumped on a little bit last night. But again, it's one of those things where when you go away for a week and then you come back and you're a boomer and then you put your hand and mouse on the keyboard, there's the first like 30 minutes of it feeling foreign and then getting back into it. But I did test the Graph when it was in the beta branch, just, on some local servers. And for me, it felt like things were more responsive or I need to come up with better terms to be descriptive of it. But I will say I felt that things were better. Right. And I know that's such a broad, shitty term. I know it's a broad, shitty term, but I also want to do more. I want to play some more. I want to test some more. I don't want to go out and say one way or another. And I also think that right now, for example, if people want to, once we conclude here, or maybe you're already there right now, Nico, he is testing the new game right now. So if you want to go see someone who's played all iterations of CSGO, now into CS2, and hear his opinion about it, who has fantastic aim, I would recommend going over there and seeing if he's giving feedback. All off streaming, right? There's a lot of people who are playing who you can go and get that feedback from and hear what they have to say.
You're working really hard to get people to turn off HLTV Confirmed.
Well, we're out of here in 3 minutes. All I'm saying is that I would go to those individuals to hear what they have to say, because there's a lot of people who have a lot of opinions. But the people who I will listen to the most will be the pro players, and especially somebody like Rops, right? Somebody like Rops is someone who I will be glued to hear what he has to say. But in my opinion, I think this is probably the most important batch of updates we're going to get since its introduction, and all the follow-up updates that are going to happen, whether it's with bugs or other bits and bobs that we've had since CS2 has been released. I think this is going to be that big of a change. At least a sizable one that will have some positives to note. I just realized we have to do a what are the odds.
Yeah, we skipped that. I wanted to say that as well.
Do we do we have anything that comes to mind?
I mean, we had the Falcons winning. What are the odds Falcons win a tournament before the end of the season?
So they're only playing in, well, I'm saying only. They're not playing in the North American events. They're playing in Astana, which has a pretty strong field other than Vitality and NAVI. And then on the other side of that, playing CAC. So we could do that. Do you want to do that?
The major.
And then the major. Yep, sure. Okay, so what...
He just threw that possibility out of the window. It's like that.
No, but it's just like, those are where we're kind of get the
It's a tournament that they can win as well.
But Vitality will be there. Vitality aren't at the other two. Anyway, so we'll do, what are the odds Falcons wins a tournament by the end of the season? Okay? Falcons win an event this season. That's fine. That works too. So we'll get a poll up and everybody in chat can have a little bit of a vote on this. Look, it really depends on how strong of a honeymoon vibe do you think that they're going to get. I think Astana might be too much of an ask because, again, I return to the field. FURIA, Falcon, Spirit, Aurora, Paravision, Mongols, MOUZ, G2. You also have 9Z, Heroic, Monty, Genomates, K27.
Yes. However, how many of these teams do you think are obviously better than Falcons?
Well, we can't get into a lengthy conversation.
I'm just saying, like, you can just
we
eyeball
have
it or whatever.
5-10 minutes. It's not, and we don't need to like rush it.
I think that Spirit's form that they showed was in the right direction. Whether or not that's consistent, I can't say one way or another. I think
obviously they got fucked by Spirit the last time around, but yeah, I mean, we're hoping that with karrigan
but they also beat Spirit 9 out of 10 times.
Sure,
yeah,
that's a good point too. There's Paravision. For me, I think at the moment, FURIA is an odd one, mainly just because of the performance I've seen from Molodoi in more pressure matches is starting to become a little bit of a concerning theme. So
they lost 2 times to Paravision, but obviously, yeah. The problem
Paravision has been a problem for them, for sure.
It's curious, though, because I think they have a realistic chance for these two, for sure. For both of them, they have a realistic chance. Even CAC, they might just, like, outside of Paravision, who, yeah, again, they have been a bit of a problem. They might just be the best team there. There's Aurora, Paravision, Mongols, MOUZ, and then 3D Max, Bait, Legacy, all these teams that we don't really expect to be in contention. So out of those, I would put them as essentially as favorites.
Okay, without seeing them play, you'd put them as favorites. I like it. I like it when Striker starts to,
Striker's bold.
He's not going with what he knows. He's not what he thinks.
I just see it.
Okay, what are the numbers?
50%.
Whoa, what? That's a high.
They will win one of these 2 tournaments. I will not give them the major. They maybe
Bro's not even thinking about the major. He's like 2 tournaments, 50%.
I think they will win one of these 2 tournaments without the major.
Holy moly!
I was gonna ask Striker to put his number in to get what the like reasonable number is, so I know I can go like
one is more like 30.
Yeah, because I wanted you to put your number so I can go like slightly lower, but you're just like insane. So
no, I think they'll win one of these 2 tournaments.
Okay.
Well, the people at home have gone with 40%. What do you?
I'm gonna go for 19%.
19%. What is that? Is that you don't have faith in the change, or you think it's too early?
I just think like it's not really that likely for this to happen. I think there's a lot of upsides, but there's also a lot of different teams that can beat them. It's not in no way a given. This is a lot more like a realistic number that you could like. What are the odds for them?
Realistic. That's very realistic
for the 3 individual tournaments for them to be winners at any of them, and then
probably better than that, but somewhere around there for sure, like 20 to 30, I think.
Yeah.
Do we think that they've got a handle on Inferno now?
Who knows? karrigan's coming in. Everything will be different.
It's less about him, isn't it? It's more about Nico and Kyosuke, because karrigan will be playing banana with Kyosuke, you would assume, right? I'm just trying to think about positions. Like,
I feel like everything on this team just relies on Kyosuke and karrigan's, how much they can sync up. How much can he extract from this young guy?
Yeah.
I just want to see Monase under karrigan and how much he can utilize that, really. Honestly, that's the one I'm looking at.
I want to be hopeful. Right, I want to be a 50% striker type of guy. I want to be hopeful. I want to live in that
I'm the one willing. Okay.
No, but,
So
but
what
that's
is
the
it? What
thing.
is it,
I
Chad?
can see the perfect storm of it working, and I know that these pieces can pull it off. But realistically, the major I don't think is in the conversation for me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they look great. But if I'm only using the other two events, CAC, I can see what you're saying. A top 4 for them. If they didn't make that at CAC, I would consider a bit of a misfire. So if they can at least make it the top 4, I'm gonna go 28%.
Okay. This
think-
is a new uncharted territory for Striker to be so optimistic about something.
But I want to
Sure.
be optimistic. I would love to be, but it's just what it does is it either gives so much credit to karrigan as an in-game leader being able to piece this together that it's like, well, they should have done this all along, or it discredits the rest of the field of, well, you guys, like, if karrigan can just come in and fuck you up like this, you guys fucking suck. So I would prefer it to be the, oh my god, karrigan's the GOAT angle, as opposed to everyone else sucks. So like Puggy stand-in style Counter-Strike is actually when karrigan calls some of his best work, right? So maybe I should have gone higher with the percent. I'm selling myself. Shit. Well, there you go, everybody. That's What Are the Odds, brought to you by Stake. And
Stake promotion. Weekly reload from Stake and HLTV confirmed. Claim it via support. Use code HLTVORG and you'll get $35 across 7 days after a minimum $20 deposit. Also, during every show now, you can have you see little riddles pop up in the lower third that you can answer to get some bonuses on the website as well.
Perfect. All right, boys. Let's put a pin in this one. We will come back, and again, we're going to have the debate. We're going to talk about who's better, Vitality or Astralis. We're going to talk about that Spirit uptick in form. We're going to talk about everything that happens between now and then on the 28th. We'll also have stavn to talk to what happened when he was on the bench for Astralis and how he sees his future going forward with NIP. And then we'll also preview what's going to happen at Fort Worth. We're going into Blast Rivals. That's the next event. But thank you all for tuning in. We will be back in, what will come around real quick, less than a week. So this has been HLTV Confirmed, brought to you by Stake. Remember to gamble responsibly. Good day. Good day, everybody. Enjoy the spring in Europe. It's getting very nice outside. Get out there. Enjoy it. Goodbye.